tulikuwa tumekaa tu nyumbani na mama hapo tunatulia.
Mamako?
Mamako? Si mamangu, manzi yangu.
Nani?
Manzi yangu.
Mke nasikia umeoa mwisho ni mdogo kushinda huyo. Sasa tu wewe ndio umemwondesha hiyo tabia.
I can do it. Hata wazazi. Kwa hivyo mimi nilikufa. Kuangalisha mtoto yangu. Are you single or married?
None of them. Business.
Sasa hiyo inahusika wapi na hiyo?
Unaona hata huyu utapata hapo na mtoto kidogo.
Wewe.
Hiyo ndio shida.
Wewe toka.
Wewe heshimu koti.
Wewe usimtafutie bibi.
Heshimu koti. Wewe heshimu koti, heshimu koti.
Ndio alikukubali amepata.
Ama si hivyo, atoe watu wale waliuza watoto wetu.
Wacha ingie ndani aende alipie makosa yake.
Jemedari will do the job for me. I will take the credit.
Are you sure Jemedari will handle this?
Ndajuaje utatumia hii maneno kunisaliti?
Hizi vyombo mimi ndio nimenunua.
Wala Biblia haifurahii mambo na uchawi.
Okay.
Ale.
I need some water.
Ale. Una sweat. Unapiga nduru.
Sio tu ni ndoto ya kawaida.
Unautemea na andale.
Babe, please. Wewe pia uamke uache kunipa stress.
Kama uongei mimi ndakuacha hapo udili na hii mess peke yako.
I can't believe I called you.
And I cannot believe you called me either.
Welcome to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Vivian Degwa. Thank you for starting off your day with us on this 21st day of November, just a day after the president called on a press conference or had a press conference at State House Nairobi, whereby he promised to join in the fight on femicide. Now, several women leaders present have embarked on a campaign on the awareness on femicide and just to try and stop femicide. Remember, since August to date, we've had around 97 women being killed. That's a very huge number, and it was about time for the state to step in on this fight. Now, remember that today is also a day when the president will be giving the State of the Nation address. This will be his second State of the Nation address, and we are expecting him to talk about several things, including health, security, education, the state of the economy, among other things. We would also love to get to hear from you and what exactly you expect to hear from the president's address. Now, today being a Thursday, we normally do Entertainment Thursday, but we're doing it differently today. So for those who are ready for Entertainment Thursday, don't you worry, we got you, but next week. Today, I'll be having a conversation on food security and food safety, and I will be joined by one Julius Nyabicha, who is a food security and food safety expert, and he will be here for us to just talk about our state when it comes to food, and that is specifically food security in the country, and maybe try to compare it with Tanzania, who at the moment are food secure. So you want to stay tuned and get into that conversation, as well as politics that will be handled by Mike Migwe. Mike, good morning, and what do we have on politics today?
Good morning, Vivian, and to everyone who is watching Good Morning Kenya. Welcome to the program. My name is Mike Migwe, and you have put it right. We have a lot in store for you, given that today the president is expected to give the State of the Nation address at 2:30 p.m. in Parliament, and that is in accordance with Article 132 of the Constitution. So what are your expectations of what the president you think should address in today during Parliament? And Right, the cost of living is one of the things that people are very interested in. So it's one of the things that people are going to look at, to see how the president handles that. And just an overview of where the country has been in matters of governance, security, and so on. And so today we'll be looking at the state of the nation. Oscar Onyango, who is a political analyst, Dr. Evelyn Ogendo, who is a political analyst, and George Kithi, who is an advocate of the High Court, and also Wafula Mutacho, who is a governance and policy expert, and also a Ford Kenya chairperson. Trans Nzoia County will be joining me in studio to talk about the state of the nation. So I invite you to tune in to Good Morning Kenya. Ray, what are your expectations in today's address by the president in the bicameral parliament?
I want to play it safe. I want to play it safe and just to wait to hear what the head of state has to say in regard to where we are. We have seen several reports well, looking at the recent reports and surveys that have been conducted by various entities, is that a significant number of Kenyans believe that the country is headed in the wrong direction. And anchored by law, the president, yes, is supposed to give the state of the nation, looking at what is happening internally as well as Kenya's foreign policy, is likely to come up during this State of the Nation address, given the recent turn of events over the last 1 year. We're also going to be hearing what the government, or rather what the president says in regard to matters of, things that are directly affecting Kenyans, and one of them is the cost of living. So I do not want to preempt what the president is likely to say, or even what I want to hear. This time I'm just walking in at 2 p.m. with a blank mind, so that I can actually hear where the president thinks that we're heading and where we are as a country. It's good to hear from the heads of state, because I mean, when we start putting our expectations to what today is going to be about, well, maybe half the chances, not everyone, actually, fact is, not everyone will be pleased with what the president is going to say. So we've had quite the year. Looking at, this is a second during his tenure. This year itself has been tumultuous, so to speak. I mean, we've talked about the rejection of the finance bill, the first ever move to be witnessed. It was been witnessed in this year. We nearly went to grounded to a stop in as far as devolved units when it comes to funding and such. We've been talking about the universities, the teachers in the fray. It's been a heavy year. So this time round, this afternoon, when we go live from Parliament buildings, where the president is going to be addressing the state of the nation and at the bicameral Parliament, I am going in with an open mind.
All right.
Okay. An open mind.
All
right. Yeah. Fair enough. Yes, let's hear what the president has to say. Now, talking about what the president has to say, the president already pronounced himself in as far as femicide is concerned. And many of you may be wondering, when we refer to femicide, I mean, what is femicide? And the basic term is that where a woman loses their life simply because of being the fact that they are female. That is what femicide is. Like, you're specifically targeted because you're a woman. If it was a man in that particular situation, maybe they would have survived. They're likely to survive more than their female counterpart. And we start off from that particular note, where only 45% of women in the country have registered themselves on the Social Health Authority scheme, compared to 51% of men. According to Deputy Government spokesperson Monisha Kizuga, the lack of identification cards and societal challenges have denied many women a chance to enlist in the new health scheme. Meanwhile, the State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action Principal Secretary Anne Wangombe is challenging men to step up their roles in fighting retrogressive cultural practices perpetuating femicide in the country. Joseph Wahungu with the details.
The country is set to observe the 30th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women and adaptation of the 1995 Beijing Declaration. The government is urging the cessation of cultural practices advancing gender-based violence in the society. Speaking in Nairobi during a media roundtable ahead of the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration on the Empowerment of Women, State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action Principal Secretary Anne Wangombe has refuted claims the recent cases of femicide in the country are a result of male gender being neglected in the nation's development agenda.
In the past, men used to spend time, or rather fathers used to spend time with their sons to guide them on ways of life, to counsel them. But it is no longer the case.
She further says the country has made huge strides in addressing 12 areas of concerns, including the inclusion of women in power and decision-making, which were emphasized in the Beijing conference.
We are not yet there, but basically I can say among the African countries, we are among the best in terms of achievements of these 12 action points.
Meanwhile, Deputy Government Spokesperson Mwanaisha Chizuga has decried low numbers of women who have been enlisted on the Social Health Authority platform.
Ni asilimia 45 wanawake wameweza kujisajili katika mpango wa SHA na asilimia 51 ya wanaume wameweza kujiandikisha kwa SHA. Tumeweka mfumo maalum ya kwamba hakuna mama ambaye atakosa kusajiliwa kwa sababu hana stakabadhi muhimu ya kitambulisho au atakosa kupata huduma za afya kupitia mpango wa SHA kwa sababu hana kitambulisho.
Now, weighing in on that, President Ruto has instructed criminal justice actors to expedite prosecution of perpetrators of femicide, while urging the society to be proactive in protecting girls and women. He said the government is fully committed to ensuring that justice is swift and efficient.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Karibuni.
Wednesday at State House, Nairobi, President William Ruto met elected women leaders to chart the way forward on the increased femicide cases in the country. While decrying the increased cases, especially by intimate partners, the president called for swift action from the criminal justice actors.
We know that every 4 out of 5 women killed is out of intimate partner violence, which means that our women are being killed in places they consider safe. I have instructed the criminal justice actors to execute their mandate without delay, holding perpetrators of femicide fully accountable.
The head of state also called for the enhancement of gender desks at police stations.
And we will introduce similar gender desks services in hospitals to ensure victims receive immediate attention and care.
President Ruto called for concerted efforts in combating the vice, while at the same time urging women and girls to be cautious when interacting with strangers, especially on social media, to avoid falling prey.
Social media has become a dangerous avenue for exploitation, and I urge our young people to treat strangers on these platforms with utmost caution. Parents, schools, churches, and community organizations must step up to provide life skills, counseling, and guidance to our young people.
He emphasized the importance of educating the public and announced that 100 million shillings has been set aside for the Safe Homes, Safe Spaces campaign.
The women leaders standing here have agreed to embark on a nationwide awareness campaign to confront this vice head-on. This campaign will have the full support of my administration, and we are committing Kenya shillings 100 million for the Safe Home, Safe Spaces campaign.
The campaign coincides with the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence that will be observed between the 25th of November to the 10th of December 2024. According to a report by police towards the end of October 2024, 97 cases of women killed in the last 3 months had been reported. At a time when the country is grappling with increased femicide cases, President William Ruto has challenged all stakeholders to play an active role in ensuring the safety of women and girls. Nancy Okware, reporting from State House, Nairobi.
We indeed hope that our brothers and sisters and ourselves remain united in this fight to stem femicide. Now, a section of human rights defenders have called for speedy investigation and prosecution of security officers found to have engaged in acts of police brutality. This even as the Law Society of Kenya demanded urgent compensation of families of victims of police brutality, insisting on the need to cease alleged unlawful arrests and abductions.
Kenya National Commission on Human Rights says it recorded 74 cases of enforced disappearance in the period between June and November 2024.
The Commission has documented 1,376 arbitrary arrests, as well as 610 cases of injuries from June 18 to November 2024. Of the injuries were inflicted by the security officers against protesters.
Out of these, the Commission, through its chair, Rosalyn Odede, says at least 26 people are still missing in the aftermath of the Anti-Finance Bill 2024 protest. It is against this backdrop that the Commission called on the government to step up efforts to address the alleged police brutality and prosecute culprits.
We call upon IPOA and to investigate and recommend charges against any officers implicated in extrajudicial killings. We further call on the government to adopt the Minnesota Protocol on the investigation of potentially unlawful death.
Abductions, torture, disappearances, arbitrary arrests ought to be investigated for the country to establish what exactly happened during the 2023 Azimio-led demonstrations and the 2024 Gen Z-led #RejectFinanceBill demonstrations.
Sentiments echoed by the Law Society of Kenya, who now want the Independent Policing Oversight Authority (IPOA) adequately resourced to thoroughly probe alleged acts of police brutality.
Subject to the report of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the National Security Council to direct the Inspector General of Police to open disciplinary proceedings against all perpetrators of police misconduct or brutality and torture, and that the reports of such proceedings be availed to the Director of Public Prosecution for the institution of criminal charges.
The Law Society of Kenya also demanded compensation of families of all confirmed victims of alleged police torture.
The families of all confirmed victims of police killings be traced, and that the Independent Police Oversight Authority and the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights provide Our Excellency, the President, with a rationalized formula for determining adequate compensation for the loss and suffering incidental to the death of their kin.
The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights also urged the National Treasury to disburse optimal resources to agencies handling the Shakahola massacre, noting that less than 10% of the 448 bodies discovered in the tragedy have been identified and handed over to the families for interment.
We have called as a commission for resources to be availed to various agencies, including the government chemists. The reagents, particularly for DNA profiling, are fairly expensive, and these had not been factored in the budget of the government chemists, they tell us, because they had not anticipated this magnitude of work.
And maybe stemming from that particular press conference, this is why we have such headlines on our various dailies this morning. Abductors, playground rights violations, abduction in Nairobi, and subsequent transfer to Kampala of Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye adds to the growing list of dissidents hounded in the country, raising fears that Kenya is no longer safe for those fleeing political prosecution in their home countries, as well as visiting foreign nationals and opposition figures. When will this stop? That's the front page of the Daily Nation this morning, just highlighting how many, foreigners have been abducted from Kenyan soil, including the murder of Pakistani journalist Ashad Sharif. We also have Ethiopian businessman Samson Telemichael. We also have the human rights defender Yusuf Mohammed, who was abducted from Kenya. Now we have Ugandan politician Kizza. We also have Maurice Mabior, a vocal critic of South Sudan's government. All of them abducted from Kenyan's soil. Is it safe for foreigners? That's a question this morning that this particular daily is tackling. And then this particular turn of events, how then does it look from a foreign perspective? Looking that we are also about to launch Kenya's foreign policy there. What does it say about safety of foreigners in the country? The Standard, similarly also reading from the same page, Kenya new abduction theater for foreigners, worrying trend, security apparatus under harsh international scrutiny. Following the abduction of Ugandan leader Kizza Besigye in Nairobi, it follows rather disturbing incidents involving Ugandan, Turkish, Ethiopian, Nigerian, South Sudanese, Pakistani and Rwandese nationals, begging the question, is Nairobi still a safe haven? We'll be keeping tabs on that. Now to the corridors of justice. A woman has been charged by a Nairobi court with obtaining goods worth 19 million shillings through false pretense. Halima, who runs a non-government organization, denied the charges and was released on a bail of 500,000 shillings and a bond of 200,000 shillings. The case is set for hearing on the 4th of December.
Ahead on diverse days attempted to fraudulently obtain goods contrary to Section 313 of the Penal Code and conspiracy to commit a felony contrary to Section 393 of the Penal Code. This was through a stretch of diverse dates between 13th February and 20th March this year.
The intended accused person to a bond of Kenya shillings 500,000 with a surety of a similar amount, and then alternatively a cash bill of 200,000. with 2 contact persons. So the matter will be mentioned before court number 5 for further directions and orders.
The prosecution opposed the release of the accused on bail, citing prior offences equating to the current charges. The defence argued that due to time constraints, they were not able to file a formal application.
What the defence counsel sought was time to file a formal application seeking time constraint. The application has been vivaciously opposed by the prosecuting counsel, Ms. Kariuki. She urged that nothing bars the court from proceeding with plea taking. No grounds had been adduced. She submitted that by dint of Section 193A of the Criminal Procedure Code, both criminal and civil procedure can proceed contemporaneously.
Senior Principal Magistrate Ben Mark Ikubi granted the prosecution time to apply, though he stated that the accused had attended prior hearings and posted bail.
I'm of the considered view that the intended accused person ought to be granted time to file a formal application to be determined on merit. I find that preliminarily the defense counsel have raised substantive issue on the defectiveness of the charge sheet.
The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has called on the government to launch a public participation exercise across the country to address the teething challenges bedeviling the recently rolled out Social Health Insurance Fund. The Commission, through its Vice Chairperson, Dr. Raymond Nyeri, says the transition from the defunct National Health Insurance Fund to the new Social Health Insurance Fund has been marred by significant obstacles which threaten the constitutional right to health for many Kenyans.
Vulnerable groups, including those with chronic illnesses, the indigent and marginalized communities, are the hardest hit, with the disruptions in access to life-saving treatments such as dialysis, cancer therapies, and maternal health care. The Commission, therefore, calls on the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with county governments, to engage in public participation and awareness, as well as inclusion, in the transition exercise from NHIF to SHIF, and urgently address the challenges faced by members of the public.
To business, all ministries and state agencies will be required to provide detailed cost breakdowns to justify their funding request. National Treasury Principal Secretary Dr. Chris Kipto says the method, which will take effect in the 2025-2026 fiscal year, will ensure that funds are not automatically allocated to programs that may no longer be feasible.
Implementation of the financial year 2024-2025 budget has faced major hurdles, exposing weaknesses in the traditional incremental budgeting system. By October 2024, revenue collection stood at 854.5 billion shillings, falling short of the 928.2 billion shillings target by 73.7 billion shillings. Ordinary revenue underperformed by 48.6 billion shillings as ministerial appropriations in aid fell short by 25.1 billion shillings.
We will be spending 1.009 trillion Kenya shillings to pay interest rates for the loans that you already have as a country, not the loans that are being borrowed, the loans we have borrowed in the past.
We need to work around addressing debt and as a recurring so that we create a fiscal space to be able to give money to roads and to important areas that you spoke about.
At the national level, pending bills accumulated to 528.4 billion shillings and a total of 181.98 billion shillings in pending bills owed by counties.
The government will in this regard initiate major reforms, including accrual accounting to curb the pending bills problem.
The new zero-based budgeting approach seeks to ensure effective allocation of public resources.
This scrutiny has the potential to reduce corruption and mismanagement of public funds. Further, with citizens' input, we get valuable insights into localized priorities and solutions.
The government says it is intensifying its fiscal consolidation efforts to stabilize the economy and curb public debt, with future focus being on priority programs under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
From business to sports, where Mozambique and Botswana booked their remaining slots to the 2025 African Cup of Nations after the final day of qualifying to complete the 24 nations list to Morocco. Botswana drew 1-1 with Egypt in Group C to get the point they needed to qualify for their second final, as Mozambique beat Guinea-Bissau 2-1 in Group I. Taifa Stars of Tanzania sealed their slot from Group H following a 1-0 win over Guinea to join fellow East Africans Uganda and Sudan in the finals as Kenya missed out.
He's stranded at the top of the Guinea tree as Tanzania come forwards themselves and finally break the deadlock. Pushed away by Balde. Langa! Oh my word, what a goal that is! Superb! Out of absolute nowhere. That's one of the best strikes we've seen in the delivery. In comes the ball. Good looking delivery, and there is the goal. It's Beto. In comes the ball, headed towards goal and in. Stanley Retief.
Well, that puts a couple matters in the headlines. As I hand you over to Mike for this conversation, is today afternoon we expect President William Ruto to give the State of the Nation address as mandated by law, Constitution Article 132. What are your expectations given the year that we've heard? Well, you can get us on X at KBC Channel 1. Let's have your feedback. What are you expecting from the President's address this afternoon? The bicameral Parliament has already confirmed the presence of the President this afternoon, and KBC Channel 1 is going to be televising that particular address. Over to you now, Mike. Take us through the conversation this morning. I'm Regina Manyara. I wish you a pleasant day ahead.
Nimekwambia kuwa wazazi wangu wanataka kunioza cha lazima. Wewe unasemaje?
Ni dhihirisho kuwa hutaki chochote kutoka kwangu.
Rama! Rama!
Chumbani mwako unamolala wewe mwenyewe, Utakata vipi we Simui hata kama hujamua? Watu watakuelewa vipi?
Rama, hebu karibia hapa.
Unakumbuka siku fulani ambayo ulikuja ukapata jamaa?
We. Kama cherehani, Fiata hilo domo lako wewe. Mwenyekiti na katibu wake. Katika masuala ya umbea tu.
Hello, fabulous ladies. Welcome to the talk show that's all about sisterhood, empowerment, and unfiltered conversation. We will be focusing on women. We believe in women.
We are really changing.
We are creating a safe space for women to connect, thrive, and share.
Just because you're a woman on a bike, you're labeled in a certain way.
It's not just a talk show, it's a movement.
When they are standing, we need to stand out.
From heartwarming tales to hilarious adventures.
They could ask me, Catherine, why are you learning?
We are turning the spotlight on women who are breaking barriers in their individual fields.
You have to have a vision.
You are the leaders of Kenya today.
Keeping it honest and relatable.
Mental health is real.
Yes.
Where there is no communication, there is no relationship.
Join the sisterhood every Sunday at 4 p.m. on KBC TV for Dada's Show.
Born in 1965, John Mutua Katuku graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Social Work from the University of Nairobi in 1993, later studying Masters of Arts in Sociology at Kenyatta University between 1994 and 1996. From 1996 to 1997, Katuku worked as a Community Development Officer and Administrator at the Child Welfare Society of Kenya before entering politics. He was elected Mwala Member of Parliament in 1997, aged 32. Ahead of the 2002 general election, Katuku was the chairman of the strategy caucus that formed National Alliance of Kenya, the coalition that brought together Democratic Party Chairman Mwai Kibaki, National Party of Kenya leader Charity Ngilu, and Ford Kenya's Kijana Wamalwa. National Alliance of Kenya would join hands with the Liberal Democratic Party to form the National Rainbow Coalition (NAC), with Kibaki being its flag bearer, and eventually winning the presidency in the 2002 general election, with Katuku getting re-elected as Mwala Member of Parliament. He was a beneficiary of a rebellion within the National Rainbow Coalition that had swept into power in 2002 with Kibaki as the presidential flag bearer. After forming his first cabinet, President Kibaki's government set about supporting a referendum on changing the constitution of Kenya. As a member of Ngilu's National Party of Kenya, Katuku supported the draft constitution. To achieve ethnic balance in the cabinet, he formed after sending all his referendum ministers home. President Kibaki had to pick one other minister besides Ngilu from Lower Eastern. Katuku was in the right place at the right time. He was picked the Minister for Water Resource. Come 2007, Katuku running on NAC Kenya ticket was defeated by Daniel Mwoki of the Orange Democratic Movement Kenya Party that had overrun almost the entire Ukambani region in support of Kalonzo Musyoka's presidential bid. In 2008, when Musyoka struck a deal with Kibaki that earned him the post of vice president, Katuku led a group of Kamba members of parliament who had been defeated in the 2007 election in accusing the president of betrayal. In 2013, however, he sought the nomination of Musyoka's Wiper Democratic Movement Kenya Party for the Machakos governorship. He lost to Alfred Mutua. Katuku later joined Ndeti in decamping to Chama cha Uzalendo and contested the governor's seat as her running mate. Again, they lost to Mutua. In the 2017 general election, Katuku initially planned to try and recapture the Mwala seat, but changed his mind and formed the People's Trust Party to contest the Machakos Senate seat. He lost to Boniface Kabaka of CCU. In 2020, he joined Maendeleo Chapchap. In 2021, he was the Maendeleo Chapchap senatorial candidate. He then withdrew his candidacy. Outside of politics, he's an avid golfer and convener of the Kambasam Golf Series. Jackie Wambiru, The Cabinet.
All right, welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Megwe, and we are looking at the state of the nation, given that the president today is expected to give a State of the Nation address at 2 p.m. in Parliament, addressing both the Senate and the National Assembly. What are your expectations? What do you think the president will address? Or are you going to get into that with an open mind? And this is coming in a time when Kenyans are grappling with a myriad of issues, including the cost of living. And it's one of the things that we are going to look at in this segment. Welcome. And in studio, I have my guests already in studio. I'm joined by Oscar Onyango, who is a political analyst. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Dr. Evelyn Ogendo, who is a political analyst. Welcome, son.
Thank you.
And Wakili George Kithi, who is a political analyst and an advocate of the High Court. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Now, let me start with you, Oscar. What do you think, or what is your expectation, or are you getting into this with an open mind, given that the president is about or will address the National Assembly and the Senate today? Are you getting to this with an open mind, or do you have expectations of what should be addressed?
Thank you again for hosting me. And my response to this is that I expect the president to attempt to give a speech of healing the nation. You know, in the first 2 years, or his regime, since the Gen Z protests in June, the 25th of June events, where Parliament was raided, and after which we've had the impeachment of his deputy. These two events impacted so much on the year and political issues that are going on at the moment. So I expect him to have a political communicative language that will help heal the political temperatures, because the cost of living is also very high and people are suffering. And again, there are policies that they've attempted to implement. Some of them have not been gotten so right with the users of those policies. For example, the movement from the shifting from the National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF, to SHIF has had serious teething problems, and you know this is health. Now, all that, in a nutshell, and bringing in now another set of people to help him run government in the so-called the broad-based government. Now, he going to address Parliament, putting into context out all this. You know, last week again, we had the clergy, the church, condemn a lot of policies of this regime. And also, in his ascending to power, you realize that one of the biggest constituencies that he had is the church. But from the church, again, the Mount Kenya constituency, where the former deputy president came from. So he is going to have to try to bring in people to understand him, and he is going to be able to, I hope, he's able to speak to the hearts of the people, so that the credibility that could have been lost during the Gen Z protest until where we are today, at least get some of it back.
Yes. Dr. She spoke about something to do with the lost credibility. Is the State of the Nation address able to achieve that? And as you answer that, what are your expectations?
The expectations today, you realize we are under new leadership dispensation, whereby previously when they met, we had the deputy president who is not in right now. So I think it's important and in order. And if you ask me, they should, given where we have come from in the past, I think they should have frequently address us. Shouldn't be something like, looks like once in a year, you know. We just have 3 years left. We have a new deputy president that we not start with from the beginning. I think that is some of the sort of orientation and sort of sorting some ailing issues. And you see the dons, the university dons are still at home. University students are still at home. There are pertinent issues that they need as 2 houses. Those are 2 houses is going to meet today. Yeah. And I think they should be having those frequent meetings, because you see, if the nation, the young people cannot go to school smoothly, and remember, we still have we still have those band issues that have not been resolved, and the SHA, people can, you know, every day people get sick. It's raining, especially now, so it's not a very good state, as I would speak. So I'm expecting so much from there as a Kenyan, and plus there's so much expected of these leaders to at least give us direction, so that we can be sure of what is happening, especially on the shift of NHIF and then to SHA. Obviously, when there's any shift, there has to be a lot of teething issues. So what we are going through with the SHA is a bit more expected, but I am hoping in the near future things are going to be solved, so that Kenyans can have better service, especially in the health facilities. Yeah.
Wakili, Oscar said a very interesting thing about this address, like it's a speech of healing the nation. Do you agree with that, and what are your expectations? And are there rubrics that the president is supposed to follow while doing this State of the Nation address?
Thank you. The State of the Nation address is an obligation bestowed upon the executive, basically the president of the time, under the Constitution, under Article 132C, 1C basically, to talk to the nation, to address the nation. Fundamentally, it underscores, the Constitution underscores that he should address it, and on the core issues of Article 10, principles of governance, and the context in which he's implementing that in his governance vis-a-vis the promises he made to Kenyans, in the context of the issues that have transformed or ought to transform the nation, speak to the nation about where we stand, where we've come from, where we're headed, and explain himself. This is because we at promulgation we put that provision because we needed accountability on part of the president. The president is elected and is given resources by the public to run the country within certain contexts, but the most important is the pulse of the Constitution, which is Article 10. He ought to explain the measures he's taken over a period of 1 year from the last time that he addressed the nation, and where on the achievement and of course some misses if he can, and what he's planning to do about the ailings of the country. 2022, I believe September is when he took the reins. He has had this is the second address I believe he's going to have. And in the context, therefore, he has probably 24 months within which he can contextualize the address. Many things have happened. What is expected under the Constitution and in law is that he will speak to the people about compliance with the law and what he's doing vis-a-vis matters of accountability, matters of corruption. And obviously, it has to be an organic speech, in a sense, address the issues that we have experienced in the last 12 months from the last time that he addressed the nation. Recently, of course, as my good friend has pointed out, the issue of the bishops complaining, and those bishops, remember, are talking not for themselves. They're talking in a context of addressing issues of the people. The Gen Z protests were within the context of 12 months before, from the last time that he addressed the nation. There's the issue of the impeachment. Of course, he was very quiet at the time of impeachment and that period. When it happened, but of course, he only addressed to the issue of the swearing in. And that's the context. Remember that a whole cabinet, again, within these 12 months, had to go because of certain accountability issues, and he had to bring a new government, a broad-based government. Again, we have seen there's the expansion of that broad-based government or reconstitution of the same is still ongoing. So he's reconstructing the government in a context probably to fit his agenda. The last time he addressed the nation, he talked about bottom-up. He may have to continue to explain to Kenyans how he's implementing that in the context of Article 10 and Article 132 read together with Article 10. He also explained on the integral issues of economic distress at the time, fiscal issues, and he proposed certain cost-cutting measures. How far are we with those cost-cutting measures? Trips and many other things. There is the issue of even entertainment and tea. We had cost-cutting measures on a reduction of budgets, especially to offices that are not constitutional in nature, and all that. So I think the context will be to address himself with the circumstances, obtaining, and how he's interacted with Kenyans from the last address to now, and also the 24 months that he's been in power. And the context will be another 36 months, that is 12 months of each year, until we get in the next election. So it's basically our safeguard, a valve of sorts, our safeguards as Kenyans, to tell that the person who we've given the mandate resources, the mandate to manage our resources, what is he doing with those resources in the context of constitutionalism?
Yes. All right. That is their views. And you also can be part of this conversation by tweeting to us. We are at KBC Channel 1, and my personal Twitter handle is at mmigwi. The hashtag to use is hashtag Good Morning Kenya. Now, let me take you through what is on the front page of our newspapers, and I will start with The Standard. Kenya, new abductions theatre for foreigners. The security apparatus under harsh international scrutiny following abduction of Ugandan leader Kizza Besigye in Nairobi. The same is carried out on the front page of the Daily Nation. Abductors playground. That is the Daily Nation. Rights violations, the abductions in Nairobi and subsequent transfer of Kampala to Kampala of Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye adds a growing list of dissidents hounded in the country, raising fears that Kenya is no longer safe for those fleeing political persecution in their home countries. What do you think of that, Oscar?
I mean, there's a lot of complexities of this particular one.
Yes.
I don't want to speak to the general abductions of that have been going on, but the one that happened 2 days ago of the Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye. You see, this guy was abducted, quote unquote, by foreign agents, probably Ugandans from Kenya. He was coming to attend a public event, then taken to Uganda. But taken to Uganda, that by the time we were told that he was abducted here, he's facing a criminal charge in a court of law in Uganda. Yes. And what is the criminal charge? He's criminally accused of, I think he was wearing firearms or something like this. Yes. Yeah. So this firearms is caught in Kenya, and now the offense is committed here, should be dealt with here. But if there are people who can come into the country and abduct citizens inside our country, I think by law, Wakili will help us, but I think it's a bit illegal. Should have been tried here if you committed a crime here. But if you can be abducted taken across the borders. I'm told he came through JKIA. He didn't come on road, by road. And if he came through JKIA, I don't know how he accessed our Kenya with these firearms. And he must have been cleared by immigration officials at KRA, at JKIA. And now when he was here, then when he left, I don't know which route they used, if not Busia. If it is Busia border or Malaba border, there is an erection of customs and immigration officials, so he was stamped out. His passport or whatever document he had was stamped out. So actually the systems here was aware that he was here and he was arrested, not abducted probably, and taken to Uganda. If you ask me, I think this one was not done properly. I think I watched the PS, Internal Security, Foreign Affairs, saying that the event was regrettable. So at least I don't want to get into it, because if the PS, Foreign Affairs, says the act was regrettable, that means probably government has admitted that there was something wrong that happened and needs to be corrected. I don't want to go into condemning some of these things, because when the government comes through a PS to say this was regrettable, there's an admission. If there's an admission, then we say, okay, probably somebody did a mistake without knowing what he was doing, but I think it was not done in the right way. And government does mistakes. People do mistakes. I think this is a mistake.
It's all over the news. But then again, the question is, does it taint the picture of the country as a safe haven for people?
According to me, there's a very big disconnect between happenings in Kenya and happenings in Uganda. And I think right now, Kenya as a country, we have been through so much, the whole world, Kenya, we are on the maps. Yeah. The Gen Z protests. There's a way that Kenya is beginning to be handled at arm's length, in a way silently. Like these people, they can always erupt anytime. Yeah. So that is my thinking. There's a disconnect of communication, one, because I listened to the PS yesterday. What he insinuated is that when such a person of such a dignitary comes into the country, or any other, let's say even Honorable Raila goes to another country, it's like that country, the host country has to, the officials have to be like notified, the foreign affairs or staff, whatever institution that handles the visitors who are coming into their country. So I listened to the PS, he was like, I think the minute, if at all what the PS was saying was the truth, that he did not notify his visit to Kenya. So I think it might have raised eyebrows, like if you are coming for a good cause in this country, because he was coming to attend, I think, Honorable Martha Karua's book launch. That's why he came to Kenya. That's my understanding. And then I'm thinking if he has been following protocol before, I'm not saying what happened to him is correct, but if he has been following that protocol, why didn't he notify the responsible authority that he is visiting the country? I think because all these things were happening in silence, and then going to, the history we have with apartments, residents. In the past, we have had heinous things happening in apartments. You are having meetings in a closed-door meeting, and then you see everybody else, like the security agencies, of course, it will raise eyebrows. It could have been not of bad faith, but the sequence of events could raise a bit of eyebrows. Here you are in this country, you have not notified the necessary people that you are visiting. You are a dignitary, you are not just anyone. You are the opposition leader in Uganda. And here in Kenya, we already have our own issues already. I think so. And the word abduction, I didn't understand that part, because according to me, abduction goes by people want to harm you. I don't know whether it's the name that was misused or it was used. Basically, the one who raised the alarm was the wife that is gotten in, and then these products come in, and then they are foreigners. You see, as Kenyans, there's no Kenyan who is involved, but they are just in our premises. They're in premises owned by Kenyans or in the Kenyan land. You see, there's something that it also gave a bad implication that we are really out of control of ourselves and our security, because foreigners are coming into our country. When they come in, they are getting into our premises. Other foreigners are coming in foreign vehicles to quote unquote, what they were using, abduct a foreigner. You see, we are in catch-22 in such a situation. So it leaves a lot of gaps unattended too. And even if the PS tried to attend, but he tried his best, and at least we got to understand what was happening, because we did not expect such a visitor to be humiliated in such a way, to be taken through what he went through. But there are also gaps between the Kenyan government, the Ugandan government, and whoever is responsible to make sure that when our visitors come to Kenya, they've not come to, obviously, quote unquote, they have not come to, they are not harmful to us. So somebody should be able to scrutinize and know the intent of the people visiting. So those people did not come up and give us the assurance of that. So we have many gaps. There are gaps in Uganda, there are gaps in Kenya, and then we are letting these foreigners come and handle our visitor, our hands off what's happening, the Ministry of Interior. You know, there's so much that we need to do. Yeah.
Wakili, I'll come to you on that, because this comes when the government has been criticized over the cases of what has been seen as abductions and maybe clamping down on free speech. So where does that leave the government? And does it also, the incident, the message incident, does it in any way hurt the diplomatic relations between the two countries?
Well, I think the contextual issue arising here is the breach of protocol, as explained. I think Kenya is trying to exonerate itself from responsibility. Two issues that come to mind. One is, for such an issue to happen, there's an administrative process involved. You cannot walk into a country and extract someone from that country on account one of the principles of sovereignty and the right of hot pursuit. Right of hot pursuit is the right of a country to pursue an aggressor in another country using its force. The right of hot pursuit crystallizes when the security of the country is threatened. The right of hot pursuit did not avail itself for Uganda in this context. And therefore, what remains is the administrative aspect, which then, if an OCS from Nairobi wants somebody from Kisii, for instance, wants to arrest someone from Kisii, he notifies the police in Kisii, and therefore the administrative element of extracting that person from Kisii is then excited. In a sense, therefore, you have to look to involve the local administration of the police in that area for you to be able to execute any arrest. And therefore, there are those fiefdoms, administrative fiefdoms in the country. For purpose of jurisdictions that cut across countries, it's even more complicated, because you have to move. If you're moving officially into a country as security officer, you don't just move, you involve the Interpol. You involve an international mechanism for extraction of that person, and therefore I think the parties that will be involved are the host countries, which is Kenya. Kenya therefore will have to compromise its administration of that person for purposes of giving the custody of that person to foreigners, that is Ugandans, for Ugandans to get the person into their custody and extract him from the country.
Let me cut you short.
Fast forward, therefore.
Let me cut you short. We go for a break, then you'll continue on that point.
Thank you.
Don't go too far. This is KBC Channel 1.
Say bye-bye to FOMO, the fear of missing out, by downloading the KBC Online app that gives you access to everything you love. Get the latest news, sport,
It's a class.
Music, entertainment news, live radio, and so much more at the palm of your hand. To get the app, simply search KBC Mobile Digital App in your Google Play or App Store and download the app. Catch what you want, anytime, anywhere. Stay connected. Stay ahead with KBC Mobile Digital App.
Agatha, look here, Kemundo. As I said, we have work to do. So please, excuse us.
Teacher, is a teacher in order calling us low lives? Me low lives?
Can you stop interrupting my line of presentation?
Sir, what is that you're taking that is making you frown?
No, this is chamomile tea with a pinch of turmeric, cardamom, and cinnamon.
All of you are roosters, I'm telling you. Roosters in your water.
Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Megui. And before we went on a break, Wakili, you were talking about the incidences of abductions. If you may continue on that point.
Yes, and therefore, if you point out, if you look at the administrative aspect on what happened, it's therefore clear that there's an element of assistance that Uganda got from Kenya. Number two, there's acquiescence, in a sense, agreeing to what Uganda wanted to do. And number three is those basically Kenya complemented Uganda in that extraction. It can't be that Uganda used force and extracted the person without the administrative aspect being supported from Kenyan side. Having said that, was it legal? Was it illegal? I think it's a context of an argument. But the truth of the matter is the host country ought to have protected the subject that was in the country and uses other extradition means, including law, the process of law, upon which someone can be extradited to the other country, and not in the manner that that was done. The other issue is, again, about Uganda explaining the justification on whether, on why it had to basically arrest. I think it's sensational to say abduct. We know abduction has been happening in this country over the time. The subject of the country, others are killed. Yes, that is a debate we're having in this country. But this was not an abduction. It was basically an arrest by a foreign country to its subjects, upon its subject. But having arrested him and taken him to Uganda, they're saying he's in possession of, pistols. I've not looked at Ugandan law on account of treason or illegal possession of firearms, but 2 pistols as an aggression against government with machine guns and helicopters, which is fighting in Sudan, which is fighting in Congo, and one subject like that can threaten government. I think it's a political issue being settled in Uganda, and unfortunately, that is inviting Kenya into the mix. We shouldn't have participated in that. But Kenya has a robust constitutional movement. I think next time, if we can, in such a situation, we ought to do better. We've hosted subjects of questions such as before, including Museveni himself. He's been hosted in this country many years ago when he was an aggressor or subject of such aggression before. And it went in peace. We didn't have any conflict with other countries on that count, and others are even in this country. The South Sudan SPLM movement has been hosted here as many times, so has the Somalia issues. In fact, some meetings have been hosted here, and Djibouti, and many other countries. So I do not see why this had to become an agency of sorts to be conferred in terms of implementation administratively in the manner that it did. But again, there are things that we know and we will know, but those things that which are obviously under subject of oath of secrecy, they call it national security, so they may never be revealed to us for now. And that is also protected in law. But that which has been revealed to us, I don't think makes sense. But it has happened what has happened. I think Ugandans can deal with their issues. We have our issues to deal with, but not BCG. It's just that I think constitutionally we seem not to uphold it in terms of protecting ourselves, but also anybody on earth or on the Kenyan earth. What it means, because the Constitution protects not just Kenyans, any human being in Kenya is also under the protection of the Constitution. So I think we should uphold it in all fours and not subject it only selectively and when it matters for us.
All right, let's look at what is reported on the front page of the Star. Raila wants 10 PSs as Ruto plans to shuffle. President looking to accommodate allies in a broad-based government ahead of 2027 polls. That story is told on page 6 of the Star. And the photo splashed on the front page is Besigye, who was taken into court-martial at Makindye, where he was arraigned after he was kidnapped at Riverside Drive in Nairobi and forcibly returned to Uganda. Oscar, the president is looking to accommodate new allies in a broad-based government before or ahead of 2027. Why is this necessary for him?
I think it is something in the right direction, and this one has happened before. I think even currently somehow President William Ruto could be running unpopular government, because I told you the credibility of his administration was tested by the Gen Z's revolution and now attempt. Some people describe it as an attempt coup. The same thing, this is 2 years after his election. This one happened in 2005 also, when Mwai Kibaki took power in 2002. Then exactly after 2 years, we had to go for a referendum, which the government lost when we lost the Wako draft. You remember when Raila and the rest campaigned against the Wako draft, and which was government draft. That was like a vote of no confidence in that government. But Mwai Kibaki had to remove the entire cabinet, do a new cabinet to help him finish that first term. He did something called Government of National Unity, I think, when he brought Nyachai and the rest to help him finish that, because the credibility of his government had been tested. Again, I think in 1982, something like this, an attempt coup, 1982, against President Moi, who had been elected in who had been president from 1979 after the death of Jomo Kenyatta. Then the Chukas of the world and blah, 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 attempted a coup, and this station was raided, and power seemed to be, they were trying to take power here when that Mambo Botella was announcing news in this premise that we are in today. When that one happened again, President Moi tried to reorganize his government to have something different. So I think what William Ruto is doing is not new. Something that has happened before. That you try, even Uhuru Kenyatta, when he's going for his second term, he tried to organize government by having a handshake with Raila. Mwai Kibaki, when they brought in the Grand Coalition after the 2002, after the 2007 general election, he did it twice actually. Mwai Kibaki did it twice. In 2005, when he sacked all his cabinet ministers and replaced them with others. Then again in 2007, when there was the post-election violence in 2007, and had to bring in Raila Odinga and another set of half of the cabinet, which were members of the opposition, who had, quote-unquote, lost the election. So again, he had to change policies to suit whatever was happening at that particular time. This is what William Ruto is trying to do. That he has to, after the JNZs and after the impeachment of Gachagua, it's like he's trying to reorganize his government because he wants deliverables. He's going to face an election. For instance, if you ask me, the issue of NHIF and the chief and Shah, this one, Nakumicha, according to me, lost a health docket because she was not able to, first of all, deal with the doctor's strike, and secondly, implement the chief insurance. So when we brought in the new cabinet secretary, what is her name again, Baraza, She just went and implemented it the way it was. Because like her position was like, because if I was Barras, I could have told the president, look, wait a minute. This thing, the way it is structured, it might bring a lot of teething problems which you don't want to deal with. And if because you want to use this one as a political tool as you campaign in 2027, give it a break, let's give it another 3 months so that I also internalize this one. Get new, better structure so that by the time we implement it, I don't think it was a bad thing, but I think it has serious teething problems which is raising a lot of eyebrows. For instance, I will explain to you. When President William Ruto was campaigning for this shifting, he categorically said that yule mtu analipaga 500 will now be paying 300 shillings, right? Which people were comfortable. The people who were paying 500, if you reduce it to 300, they were, okay, this is the right thing to do. But now, they're now complaining that if you get to register in that portal, then that portal gets you a fee that you're supposed to pay. There are people who are paying 500 per month, but now the portal is telling them to pay 3,000. Some are being told to pay 1,200. Some are being told to pay 1,600. You know, this is somebody who was told that you'll be paying 300. But now the portal decides, because of the narration you give the portal. Then in that narration, the portal decides how much you're going to pay. So you end up paying a sum that you don't know, you didn't plan for, which is a problem for the people. I think this one is going to mess his re-election. But you know, in politics, what you normally do, I always say, you take 5 promises, only 5, then implement 2. Like, for example, President Mwai Kibaki took a lot, I think, including free primary education, and implemented free primary education well. So, you know, you stick to that one. That actually, I said I will implement 5, but there were things that I could not implement because of the situation. Otherwise, I did this one. One time when Tony Blair, I think Tony Blair was elected to become the Prime Minister of England, of the UK, he was asked by the media that now you've been elected the Prime Minister, what are you going to do for the English people? And he said, the first thing we're going to do, we have to go back to the English people and tell them that among the promises we made, these are achievable and these are not achievable. Number 1. Because we have to go back. Then we say 10 things, but otherwise, only 5 are achievable. So, you know, you become believable when you do such a thing. But if we cannot even implement this shift thing, I'm wondering how will we go, William Ruto, face the people in 2027 without a strong policy like the health, you know, this is something so dear to the people. Again, at the time that the people are facing such a thing, there's a crisis of living. Cost of living has really gone up. With now the introduction, which we are introducing again, we are introducing the amendment. You know very well that this week we are introducing the amendment of the Finance Bill 2024, the amendment that the government is trying to get another 178 billion. Now, again, taxes, there are more taxes that are being added to the system. Now, the cost of the spending, people are not able to spend because salaries are coming down. It's like salaries are coming down, but the cost of living is going up, which is a mismatch. And this is what is, according to me, even the pastors who are complaining, they're really not complaining about whatever is happening. You know that Kenyans are not even spending on tithing and sadakas anymore because people want to eat. And people feel the pain that the money is not able to buy anymore. So we need radical decisions. For example, if I will be Mbadi, who is trying to help the president achieve a few things towards the election, just remove things like VAT and a lot of taxes on food, for example. The people are able to eat energy, cost of electricity. Remove tax on that one. No cost of electricity. Because it is expensive for the people. And the belt is tightening even more. So I'm even worried about 2025, how will it be? Because we are tightening it more and more. I think we should have a system where we bring a lot of people into the tax bracket, but reduce tax. So that many people, I think Mwai Kibaki's government focused on that. He was not so focused on taxing. He was focused on bringing so many people to the tax bracket. And many people, and reducing the tax, bring so many people, and you can achieve still whatever you want to achieve. But in our case, you find that the tax bracket is shrinking because big companies are not paying tax. Some of them are evading tax. Even the issue of the churches again, the way I look at it, you know, Mungatana was trying to bring in a bill so that the offering in church can be taxed. That is wrong. I think you should not tax the offering.
Yeah.
But I still think that the businesses that are run by these organizations should pay taxes. For example, hospitals, for example, schools, for example, any other business like other you know, churches own malls in town. There is one, I think I've seen one at Basilica Cardinal Otunga. You know, those ones, the businesses that are run by these organizations should be subjected to a tax. But offering that is in, you know, you're going to go, it's difficult to go into the KRA going into the final accounts of churches to say, okay, this is how much you collected, you pay VAT on this and this. And that one might be a bit tricky. But the businesses that are run by this organization should be subjected to some tax because they earn income, and they earn rent on them, they earn a lot of, it is business.
All right.
Can I just comment on that, about the tax, what
yes.
you just said? You know, what you should remember is, any tax on anyone, be it somebody is handling a private health facility or to schools, if tax is going to subject it to them, you know, these are people doing business.
Yes.
So what that means, it is getting subjected to the end consumer. And who is the consumer? Yeah. The sick people, yeah. Those going to school, and it is still going to raise even the cost of living even higher. So there is no way out. You can talk of an entity in isolation. You know, even if you talk about the church itself paying tax to the government, you know what that means? It goes to the people. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll not be doing business, and then according to you, you are going to subject tax to me. Let's say, for example, even if I'm a landlady, you're not going to subject tax to me because the idea of me building my apartment was for me to make money. So when you come up with the new ideas of taxes, what does that mean? My rent has to go up because ideally, I have to get my money back.
But you get, you know, what we call income tax is that it is the money that you receive. For example, if you do a mall in the middle of town, be it a private mall, be it a, you know, you're going to get an income out of it. And that is what government tax is called, income tax. Income is when you receive an income in terms of salary. Pay as you earn. When you pay as you earn.
We understand all that. Yeah, income tax, pay as you earn.
Yeah, but
you know, that is,
this
is within our understanding.
Yes.
And when I say that, it is with that one considered in it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, naturally, you know, we are not an utopian. You know, we are Kenyans.
Yes, yes.
And we want to maximize on profits. So there's no way out you're going to introduce new stuff. I'm used to, this is what I'm paying, and then you're coming to introduce new taxes to me and expect me to still leave these people financing my business, yes, and they still leave it as a point.
You don't for paying taxes?
Let me rationalize that. I think it's a good debate out there.
Yes.
In law, the principle in law is you don't tax charity. If you and me meet and somebody's getting married, and we're assisting in a pre-wedding or whatever, you don't tax that money. You don't tax harambe for education. There are things that you don't tax. Because the social element must be grown to be able to organize the people in their own way for purposes of encouraging charity, because that's what basically organizes the context of social edifice. Now, if you extend, you look at the elasticity of charity, churches are organizations that organize people within religious contexts. They then get money, collect money from people, and again invest the money in such that their intention, probably in education and helping the people, the poor outreach programs, are facilitated further by the investment that they make. So that money is not basically for purposes of business for profit. It's business so that it goes back to the charitable intentions of that organization. That's why in law we have something we call companies limited by shares, companies limited by guarantee. Those limited by guarantee are supposed to file returns on account of the charitable returns that they make. So you'll realize that, yes, context is different. You can build a mall, but you can still be bankrupt even if you don't have a mall. The reason is the money that comes in supports so many institutions like schools and churches. And therefore, eventually, this tax bracket will not probably be served better because this money comes from the same people. You'll realize that expansion of a tax bracket need not necessarily go to such charitable organizations. You just need to bring many, like my good friend said, many to the fold, and then lower the taxation levels so that as many as possible pay to the same pool, but very little. Remember, you can gain a lot of money. I saw the Gen Zs the other day raised, I think, 20 million within a day or so on the few of the little monies that they were contributing. Yes. That is what is important. That's what taxation would be. Many people contribute in small amounts to the big amounts that we're looking for, the billions that we're looking at. The joke with Kenyans was, give us the debt outstanding for Kenya abroad. We will contribute, and one day we're going to pay it. So that then we are free from debt. It was an argument, of course, in jest, but the point remains that if we contribute as much as possible, but little amounts, which is contribution of tax, into the same pool, then we'll have a lot of money. That's really the rationale that should be. So sometimes, yes, you tax because of the urgency and go deep into the pockets of the people to address certain issues. But if you have the comfort, you will probably address it that way and allow people to pay less, but pay more, and make sure everybody shares into the burden of taxation in the country, which is what we are trying to achieve in this country. I think the question initially that excited this debate, yes, I think was the question of legality and legitimacy. You know, legality is the law, and that's important. President William Ruto is legally the President of the Republic of Kenya, and there's no debate about it. How he is reorganizing the government in the context of what you said, bringing new PSs and so,
Raila wants 10 PSs.
Is trying to buy into legitimacy. Legitimacy, by the way, has an element of what the people feel about you and the general national psyche towards you. So what you need to do is, broad-based government was for purposes of rendering comfort and the feeling of belonging into government by putting faces and representation into that government to address the issue of the differences and fissures within society. Context being, for instance, ethnicity, religion. There is now a generational element coming to it, the Gen Zs and, of course, the older generation of the country. So there are many things that you need to meet. It's not easy. So why you reorganize government is to continue to be responsive to the people, and remember that I need to be legitimate to the people, notwithstanding that I am legally the president. And in that context, therefore, you buy into the people for purposes of addressing their issues, one, and addressing the issue of an election in 2027 in the context in which we
will that work? Will that work? Will that work?
Let me tell you this. Whether it works or not, it must be done. Because remember, there was a reconstitution of government right from cabinet and then the deputy president. Fast forward is, there are those elements, therefore, that were not loyal. The question of loyalty comes in. Were not loyal to the president because they came from the angle of the deputy president. That has to be addressed because loyalty and legitimacy at a point meet. And the fusion of the same will be that those that serve government do not sabotage the government, but serve the government with the intention of delivering for the holder of the office, who is the president.
For instance, you find, the other day I saw the former CS, Moses Kuria, write a tweet when the Catholic Church were condemning the president. Then Moses Kuria writes a tweet that the Catholic Church are always right, and they will always be right, and he is an advisor to the president. You see, that loyalty is not there. He is not sabotaging whoever is working for. Even if you need to, in a good working system, even if you need to condemn, get away and platforms of doing it. But just doing it on Twitter, I think, for me, that one should not be accepted. Number two, Gachagua was not alone. He had these people who were loyal to him. They're still serving in government. For example, the chairman committee of budget Because the main thing here, even CS Mbadi, whatever he's doing, is on implementing a budget. And there was a committee that worked on that budget led by Dindi Nyoro, who is also now a bit for Gachagua at this particular time, and is expected to help implement the same policies that the same government is working on. You know, his mind is also already divided. So I support something like that. You know, check out and weed anybody whom is not acceptable, is not accepting your policies now, how you want things to work, because your goals are different, including the PSS. The other, whatever you are reading there, as Raila wants
10 PSS.
10 PSS. I think this is out of question, because already they are bringing a budget towards that. That means the PSS that will be appointed, they will never be seen as experts in their own field.
But you cannot ignore the fact that this is a political. In a way, it's a political.
Now, if my name is Omondi, if I'm appointed a PS tomorrow, I'll be seen as a Raila person who has only come to fill in the 10 PSS that Raila is trying to, you know, which makes it. You're starting from a wrong notion. Yes, you're not starting from a notion that these guys are going to do some other thing, bringing ODM. For example, the Mount Kenya, I think, opposition to William Ruto. I don't think the Mount Kenya hates William Ruto. It's not true. Yeah, they just don't like it that William Ruto is working around with Raila. Only. And if William Ruto says, I'm not working with Raila anymore, then they become friends again. And Gachagua was very clear that we just didn't like, Uhuru was our man, was our son, and what we hated in him, he didn't work with Raila. So we dumped him. And again, if Ruto works with Raila, we dump him. If Ruto comes back to work with us, now it's okay. He's a good guy. That's it. It's not about any other thing. So even the person writing Raila wants 10 PSS is just trying to dig into that debate of that division. You know, and again, the government must work. And that's what he's saying. Everybody must be in it.
Dr. is trying to comment on that.
Okay, you know, I want to take what you're saying as your opinion,
it's my
which
opinion.
can be correct or wrong in my context.
Yes.
But I do not agree to it. If you ask me about Raila wanting the 10 slots for PSS, according to me, there should even be more. Because how are we going to have, they're already in, the ministers are already in from the Raila side.
Yes.
So him wanting those slots could only be completing the equation. And if you ask me, if we really, you remember the time of Kibaki, the Nusu Mkate, the government worked very well. Because if you ask me in this current, this government, this Kenya Kwanza government, if they really want for us to move within the 3 years, to move really very actively and do stuff for ourselves, for the Kenyan citizen, if the minister is Kenya Kwanza, the PS should be this. So that it's checks and balances. We are going to have things, the government moving. And then when we want to build on perceptions, like you're talking about Mount Kenya, they didn't like this person. I think that is promoting tribalism, which we should try by our level best. Because you understand, according to me, okay, you know this, the President Ruto is human, just like any other person. There's so much you can handle, there's so much you can... You know, when you're under so much pressure, I don't think you can even think straight. So my thinking is, I'm not saying he's a good person, and I'm not saying he's a bad person, because there's no one perfect person. But when we are faced in a situation like this, that is so, our economy is so tattered, is so ununderstood, why don't we avoid the pessimism and try to inject some kind of positivity into whatever happening that is there, at least to try and get answers,
Inject
at least
some
for the
level of
education,
positivity.
at least for health. No, let us, okay, there's a lot of negativity around, and there's a lot of pessimism. Anybody trying to raise a point, you want to raise fingers. If we can try as Kenyans, okay, fine, we're in the mud together. You know, all of us Kenyans were in the mud, because when things are happening, it's not only the president that is affected. Us, we are the people who are affected down here. The Wanjikos were the ones who are affected. So there's a lot of, if we as Kenyans can avoid the pessimism and try and handle this as in a sober mind, because the worst has already happened, I believe, and we don't expect more than what is happening right now. So we can have some kind of damage control strategies by avoiding a lot of pessimism and injecting tribalism remarks that are going to make us be apart to escalate the gaps that we have.
All right. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go too far. This is Good Morning Kenya.
Nimekwambia kuwa wazazi wangu wanataka kunioza cha lazima. Unasemaje?
Nidhihirisho kuwa utaki chochote kutoka kwao.
Rama! Rama!
Chumbani mwako unamolala wewe mwenyewe, eh? Utakata vipi wewe Simui hata kama hujamuua? Watu watakuelewa vipi?
Rama, hebu karibia hapa.
Unakumbuka siku fulani ambayo ulikuja ukapata jamaa?
We. Kama cherehani, Fiata hilo domo lako wewe. Mwenyekiti na katibu wake. Katika masuala ya umbea tu.
Hello, kids.
Hey, guys.
Hey, everybody. Are you ready for fun? Huh? We have an amazing package just for you. Akili. Ubongo.
Ubongo kids. Ubongo kids.
Big minds.
Stop this confusion. I am who I am.
Travelers.
I can travel to wherever I want.
Robocars. And engine.
No more pollution, you know what I mean.
Oh, those little geniuses.
The Children's Corner. Saturday mornings this holiday season only on KBC.
That's right.
Ama si hivyo, atoe watu wale waliumiza watoto wetu.
Wacha ingie ndani, aende alipie makosa yake.
Jemedari will do the job for me. I will take the credit.
Are you sure Jemedari will handle this?
Ndajuaje utatumia hii maneno kunisaliti?
Hizi vyombo mimi ndo nimenunua.
Wala Biblia haifurahii mambo na uchawi.
Okay.
Ale.
I need some water.
Ale.
Una sweat. Unapiga nduru.
Sio tu ni ndoto ya kawaida.
Unautemea na ndale.
Babe, please. Wewe pia uamke wacha kunipa stress.
Kama uongei mimi ndakuacha hapo udinai mess peke yako.
I can't believe I called you.
And I cannot believe you called me either.
You're still watching Good Morning Kenya, and this is the state of the nation, and we continue with the conversation with my panelists. That is Oscar Onyango, who is a political analyst, Dr. Evelyn Ogendo, a political analyst, and Wakili George Kithi, who is an advocate of the High Court. There's something about taxation that the CS Treasury, there's something he highlighted, and he said that the government is considering lowering pay as you earn over a period of 2 years. He also said that Kenyans need to discuss how to make overall tax manageable. Let me start with you, Akili. What does that mean for the common mwananchi? Lowering pay within a span of 2 years, it's possible. Mm-hmm.
One of the complaints about our taxation regime here is it's unpredictable. So as an investor, assuming you want to invest in Kenya and you seek an opinion, an expert opinion on the taxation regimes here, you'll receive very complicated opinions. Yeah. Rather, the returns won't be very simple. Yet, a taxation regime ought to be the simplest, easily understood and affordable, and shared. The burden is shared across. The reason is, you know, there's what we call a Finance Act, which is the law, the primary law. But then the Finance Act is a continued piece of legislation throughout, every year. But every year, the context will be we amend the Finance Act on VAT, on pay-as-you-earn, on all phases and streams of taxation, if you would call them that. So there's no consistency. So if this year VAT is 16%, becomes to 18%, goes back to 16%, then 18%, and I'm an importer, and I sell wares and goods, I can't therefore plan within that context for like 6 years, or how then my company will grow for 10 or 15 years, or what I want it to be in 50 years. I think paying taxes is agreeable to every Kenyan. I've never had a single Kenyan saying, I don't want to pay taxes. No. What they are saying is, one, it must be predictable. So that then I know in the next 3 years, I'm going to do this and this project because my finances can be arranged in a certain context. It can't be ignored that you, I don't know whether I should use this, but you variegate, you probably change the taxation percentages and components over time. Say 1 year you change this, second year you change this. So the budgeting context in this country seems to be adding or subtracting in the tax against certain brackets or changing the taxing regime. I do think it's possible to have a constant taxation or tax regime over a period of years for consistency. Meaning, therefore, if you earn a certain amount X at KBC, and you work at KBC for 10 years, you are able to know where you will be in 10 years because the projection of salary growth is provided for, and the projection of tax implementation is projected for. And therefore, if you take a loan, you are able to subject it to a context of how you're going to pay it. And therefore, you don't take a loan today, subjecting it into 15 years to come, knowing that this is the amount you're going to pay, and therefore the income residue for you will be a certain amount so that you can fend for your family and pay school fees and so on and so forth. Then that is removed away from you, is taken away from you, yet you knew that you are going to contract and make arrangement within a context of a financial arrangement imposed on you by government. So I do think it is true we must tax, but I think we must settle at a certain point and allow people to be able to project within their financial arrangements how they're going to live. If you tell me what you'll be paying and your financial capacity and purchase power in 3 years, how it will be, you can't say, because you do not know. You do not know how the tax regime is going to settle. So the work of Parliament, therefore, is not to change tax brackets every time there is a taxation cycle. So that every year we expect VAT gets changed and so on and so on. We must settle that. So there's predictability. What we lack here is predictability. You can't therefore settle on investment. The other issue, I think, in that context on matters taxation is we must be able to agree. Are we taxing to develop? Or are we going to be patient enough to allow people to grow and have capacity to pay more taxes by giving them incentives such as low taxation and other incentives for purposes of growing themselves and growing the sectors such as agriculture, tourism? Because we've seen that this intensity in trying to get quick fixes hasn't helped us. Look at tourism. I can tell you, tourism is at its lowest, no matter how we look at it. And our competing destinations are doing better. Zanzibar, Mozambique, South Africa, in Africa, Tanzania, even Uganda. They are growing. Even Rwanda has become robust in its attraction for tourism and has basically advertises gorillas and it gets what it wants. Number two, Egypt is a destination that is taking over from us and so on and so forth. Look at, for instance, manufacturing. Companies are leaving the country because of the environment we're imposing in them, including unpredictable taxation environment. So we must be patient enough to say the growth will come, but we need to subject the people to environment so that they can get education, they can grow, and therefore eventually we reach where we want. If we want to move because we want a legacy of a regime, we want to be seen to be doing big things. That's what the people are asking for. In any event, Kenyans have never asked anyone to do big things for them. They've asked them to provide environment so that they live in a dignified manner, including imposing taxation and tax regimes that are affordable. I think that is not too much to ask from any regime. So when you get there, I think it's not to think forward and say, I want to be this great man, so that when I leave, I've done this and this. I think I agree with what my good friend has said. Do not consume too much than you can chew. Not buy too much than you can chew. I think make available for the people that environment in a context for them to thrive. And then you'll get where you want, including the fact that we'll remember you for making life affordable for the people. That's an achievement.
Yes.
Making life available for the people is a big achievement than the roads that we build and probably airports that you build, I think.
Doctor, you want
to...
Okay,
I want to say something.
Yeah.
You know, the problem we have in this country is that we do not have familiarity a lot about this taxation. Familiarity, like in the sense that, you know, it's like you remove money from this pocket and put it here. You know, when you talk about you lower, is it to halt the pay or to lower the tax for pay? What did Mbadi say?
The CS said that the government is considering lowering pay as you earn within a period of 2 years.
Yeah, so you see what I'm saying? Eh? The biggest problem we have in this country, Kenyans, by the way, especially the lower and the middle class, they pay tax. Because you see people operating businesses, they really don't want this cat and mouse business, especially with the KRA people, especially with the county government. Are you saying? I believe that's how the government generates its money. But there's a bit of opaqueness. Are you saying like now the expressway? I see monies being collected. I see, you know, we have, you know, we don't even understand what does the 16% VAT in the first case. What is the collection of 16% VAT collection and what does it do? Which amount pays who? You know, there's so much that we want to have familiarity. Kenyans don't have familiarity because now if I'm not familiar with something, I make many assumptions. And number two, I can't say anything about it because I feel like I'm ambushed. How can the Kenyan government make it possible for Kenyans to understand what is happening? You know, not like the mama mbogas, they think the 16% is stealing their money. Let them understand how are civil servants paid, how are who paid, what is happening. You know, when at least there's an environment of familiarity, we can reduce this kind of pessimism. However much we are struggling, and I know the president is also struggling on his own because he didn't find this country, he found this country in pieces. And what the country Kenya is undergoing right now, it is because of historical issues. It did not start with Ruto, it started with other regimes, not even with Uhuru himself, with the other regimes, but everything is banked on him. But Kenyans have not had that space to also give him that type of understanding that he came in and found a tattered house. And you see this pampering this right and left. But the people, because he has ministers concerned and the PSS, they should be within their context, play their roles within their context. And at most, let Kenyans understand what does 16% VAT do? What does what do? What are these debts that we have? Where have, you know, continuous updates. And another thing I would like to say, money is collected in this country. Before they can even want to lower or higher any taxes, can they make sure if you collect 10 shillings, they are understood it is 10 shillings, and this is their money that is being used. But there are so many loopholes. There are so many, there are so many loopholes. First, I think according to me, the government should just concentrate on closing these loopholes, these loopholes where money is going. So, you know, if I collect 10 shillings and at the end of the month, I'm having 2 shillings, but somehow because I've put him responsible of a certain docket, there's some money that is not coming in. He is my friend, I cannot ask him, I cannot peg him, I cannot raise this because the Kenyans are going to be on him. Are you saying? So I end up wanting to be comfortable with my 2 bob. Because I also owe him one way or another. So if we can have that type of, can we first take care of what is collected before you decide to lower or higher any taxes? Have you taken care of the 10 shillings you collect in a month? Have you taken care of the resources? You know, the Kenyan country, it's, you know, the government, it's a landlord, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, all that is not factored in. So all we know, higher taxes, higher what? This money collected, how much is it? How much do we collect in a month? Familiarity.
Yeah.
At least Kenyans can be in a position of reducing the pessimism, the current negative energy among citizens. Yeah, that's my prayer.
The two panelists have raised very interesting aspects in all this. Wakili has matters to do with predictability, and now Daktari has come up with matters to do with familiarity. But also the question, is there a level to which the people need to feel that they are comfortably taxed? Oscar?
I mean, if I summarize what Dr. is raising about predictability and what she's talking about familiarity, I will summarize it in terms of stability.
Yeah.
That people want to be sure of what they're dealing with. For example, that if you buy an insurance, education insurance for your children today, a child who is 2 years old, that by the time they get to university, by the time they get to secondary, when they need to use that money, they will still be stability. You will get value for that money. That one has been lacking. For instance, when we have banks' interest rates which are fluctuating, when bank interest rates are fluctuating, then you buy insurance that is going to expect to use in 10 years, and then when you go to withdraw that money so that you take your kid to school, the insurance company will tell you, no, there were fluctuations. So although we promise that we will be giving you your premium at 10%, we can only afford to give you at 8% because we also invested that money in the market. And the market where we invested that money it keeps on fluctuating. Sometimes the interest goes up, sometimes the interest goes down. You know, you cannot avoid some of these things. And for example, you know the interest rate. For example, what COVID did to our systems. Yeah, the interest went down, and sometimes they were coming up. And sometimes there's a bullish and bearish type of system. So it's difficult to have that type of system. But other steady economies, but it's not anymore because, like for example, the cost of living now is a global problem. And it's caused by partly the war in Russia and Ukraine, and also the wars in Lebanon and Israel, because they affect the global trade. They interfere with whatever is happening because we are in one globe and we are in one market, and anything that happens in one corner affects the other thing that happens in the other corner. But now, you asked me is there a time when citizens will feel they are comfortably taxed? I don't think if we can get to that particular time. Although when, for instance, people are able to house themselves, you know, what you want to do, what do you want to achieve? For example, if you work at KBC, I want to drive my car comfortably. I can come with my car continuously into town. I'll be able to pay it comfortably. You want to be able to pay for your kids' school fees without any struggle, and you want to be able to house, not probably pay rent, build a house for yourself. That is at that level when you can achieve those ones comfortably. Those ones are the basic things that sometimes you need in a middle class family. But when you have to have interference in the economy, which forces you to sell that car and sell that house so that you're able to stay afloat. And you know, most of the people who were in the middle class dropped down to lower class because of COVID, because people lost jobs, companies were closing, now companies are moving out of the country. And what does that cause? The ripple effect is that people who have mortgages, who are working in those companies, have to either let go those mortgages, let go those houses, let go those cars, and start afresh again. So that stability is lacking. When that stability lacks, that means the people who are managing the general economy of the country has a problem. Maybe we are not investing so much on futuristic ideas. For instance, you know, when this guy who is called Elon Musk brings something, this Safari Link thing here, it renders the fiber optics that we've been rolling down all this time all useless. And that is what happened to a company like Telecom. Because Telecom had these analog lines and they had a big network in the country. Then we had a company called Safaricom which came up, which was doing the mobile phone. And now all the laid down, the infrastructure was done by Telecom, goes under the water. The same way the people were laying fiber optics, they're still laying the fiber optics. But we are told that there's Safari Link that is coming, which is going to provide international Wi-Fi. You can get that Wi-Fi anywhere. That renders all the fiber optics projects and the money that we're investing in fiber optics all useless. So we're not really investing in futuristic ideas. We are only investing, we are caught off guard all the time. Somebody said that the development in Africa and the Western world is like a child held a hand by his father, who has doing big steps and very stable. But this kid who is being pulled by the dad is very unstable and cannot do and keep up with the father. So anytime he keeps on investing, he finds that something big has changed and it's moving very fast. So we are putting money on the wrong ideas. It is wrong for us to lay fiber optics now, because in the next 2 years, we won't need them again. But you know, it's a big infrastructure. Some companies are getting into big loans to lay those fiber optics. So we need to invest in futuristic ideas. And if we invest in futuristic ideas, we will even go to our educational system, because we are churning out university graduates who cannot be able to do anything in the market, because the market that they want, that we are preparing them for, is changing rapidly. And we have the traditional way of training, which is not in tandem with the contemporary market. So there's no time that our people will feel that unless we have growth.
Yes.
Yes, and if we have growth, something must give.
Yeah.
Even the development partners and everything, something must give for us to have growth. And at that level, we will find that, okay, the taxation is not bad. People are not worried about even. The country that tax 50%. But you see, 50% of taxation, but what is the government doing? You find the social benefit system is so huge. People who are not working are paid salaries.
The systems there work.
The systems work.
Are supposed to here. And I think that is one of the problems that Kenyans raise in terms of where are these taxes going. Isn't that true?
Yeah. I think that was my argument, in the sense that what is this money doing? Where is it going? How much is it? You know?
Yeah.
You see, and again, the other day I was talking about that. Some of the things that we have a problem, which have failed, for example, the church. The church has failed to provide people with basic moral capital. Those a country without values. If we want to sit down and discuss about femicide, why are women being killed, for example? Give me right. Corruption that we talk about every day. Why are people whom we put in office as experts end up just looting the money and using it for completely different things? You know, when you loot KEMSA, you know you're looting on what? When you loot nets, who are supposed to help people with malaria. When you loot money that is meant for HIV patients, ARVs, when you bring in looting to that level, that means that we are living in a society that has completely gone rogue, a completely that has no values for anything, and the moral capital needs to be put in place by the clergy, the church, who I blame for where we are, because at the beginning you got us here. You got us here because...
Let me say this. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, no.
Church is an integral part of society, so are religious institutions. But church does not legislate. Church is not society. The sum total of society is the general psyche that brings Kenyans together. And I don't think the church brings Kenyans together. It is part of the component of the many facets that compose the Kenyan society. I'll give you a good example. Okay. I was in Japan about 3 weeks ago, or a month ago. One thing I learned is that there is a year, one whole year in primary school, where nothing else is taught except morals, in class. So it's not English, it's not Swahili, it's not mathematics, it's not anything else. You are taught morals. You are taught why, when it's red light, you must stop and allow it to give you time to be green for you to walk. And why, when you're driving, it's red, you must stop. Whether there's traffic or there's no traffic. You will be taught why, after eating your banana, you must throw and dispose at an appropriate place. And why, when you open the sweet and you take the sweet, it is your responsibility to keep that which has wrapped the sweet in your pocket until you get home. So when you get to a supermarket, and that was strange for me, so I bought something I want to eat, so I eat. Of course, the Kenyan way. Now, I want a place to dispose it. Zero. There's no place, there's no dustbin. Then I see a notice saying, carry your trash home. Carry your trash home. So if you buy anything, whatever is disposable after you use is your responsibility. So if you walk in the streets, you don't see plastic. You don't see anything. So we went to a well, let me put this, we went to a World Cup competition where I was participating. After the competition, I go back to the stadium. There is nothing including spillovers on the seats. There was, of course, ice cream, there was everything. But those spillovers, people have wiped their seats. Now, we don't need the church to do that because a whole year in primary school is dedicated to morals. So you don't legislate on morals, no. You legislate on control of conduct and behavior. However, I asked them, is there a law that says if you throw trash this way, you're going to get prosecuted? No. It doesn't even say. You see here, we say, usikojoe hapa, ukikojoe hapa, tutakushtaki. You know, we'll prosecute you. There, it doesn't, the notice doesn't say, if you throw trash, we're going to prosecute you. No. It simply says, carry your trash home. And those little things are a build-up to the general behavior of society. So much so that if you accuse of a minister in Japan, for instance, of embezzlement of funds, that's a direct resignation, especially if there's evidence. But number two, some even commit suicide on account of that accusation. You know why? The build-up towards the moral edifice that then organized society is not because you have a position. It is because you were taught to do it. In African context, before we became Kenya, we were small communities in our ethnicity.
Yeah.
But it will be condemnable, for instance, to be seen doing a certain act that's abominable then. In fact, we will probably have to cleanse the society on account of something you've done, which is abominable. So the context is, are we there yet? I think it's more of the training of the Kenyan society than the debate, because church is not going to go away and bad behavior is not going to go away until we instill it.
Yes.
I think I need to
No. We'll come back to that after we go for a short break. Okay. We'll be right back. Don't go too far. Okay. They take a whole year kufunzwa maadili.
Mtazamaji, tumekuandalia taarifa zinazogonga vichwa vya vyombo vya habari kutoka hapa jijini Nairobi na pia mashinani.
Wanahabari zaidi ya ubora wao wako ange kukuletea habari pindi zinapochipuka kutoka pembe zote za Kenya.
Kwenye kipindi cha Tamrini tunakuletea mazungumzo ya moja kwa moja kufafanua na kuangazia masuala yanayokuhusu wewe mtazamaji.
Kumbuka, taarifa yenye thamani daima hupokewa kwa amani.
Hivyo basi usikose kuungana nasi kila siku ya wiki.
Tukupakulie na tukutaarifu taarifa yenye mnato kwenye runinga unayoienzi. Kwenye kurunzi mashinani,
sisi DC.
Hello kids.
Hey guys.
Hey everybody. Are you ready for fun?
Huh?
An amazing package just for you. Akili. Ubongo.
Ubongo kids. Ubongo kids.
Big minds.
That is confusion. I am who I am.
Travelers.
I can travel to wherever I want.
Robocars. And engine.
No more pollution, you know what I mean.
Oh, those little geniuses.
The Children's Corner. Saturday mornings this holiday season only on KBC.
That's right!
Thank you for tuning in to Good Morning Kenya. We continue with this conversation. And Wakili, you're talking about something to do with morals and the moral aspect of what was witnessed taught in Japan.
Yes.
If you can continue on that point.
And what I was saying, therefore, I think the cutaway would be that morals are taught. They're not supposed, it can't be that by default they should be ingrained in you and passively probably taught to you on Sunday in church, where the context, in fact, now is the commercial aspect of the religious movement in this country. So, yes, the churches are supposed to be doing a good thing to moralize the country, but that can't be a universal application because, I mean, you cannot say that when you go to church first you have to listen to what the pastor is saying.
Yes.
You can listen and behave in a good manner on Sunday or within the environment of the church. After that, you become a Kenyan citizen. And you have a whole week on how to behave. Number two is not all people go to church. So church cannot be the beholden institution that then induces, imbues good behavior in society. It can't be left to the church. It must be taught. We speak English because we were taught English, and good English for that matter. We speak Swahili because we were taught Swahili. We know mathematics because we were taught. When you are taught, it is pumped into you such a way that it becomes part and parcel of who you are in terms of your output. If morals, therefore, are taught in the context of the subjects that we have in this country, it becomes part of you, and therefore it is an output that lives with you. And therefore, even if we legislate, or in the context of legislation, you can't legislate on everything, there are certain moral aspects that will be an output of the society because they were taught to the people. We don't teach ethics. We don't pump ethics into people's and children's hearts and part of our education on account of probably the argument on convenience of how many subjects should be available to be taught. But if we did it, generationally, we will be able to have an improvement on the general national psyche and how we handle public property. The last thing I want to tell you is this. There's a principle in law which we say that that which belongs to all belongs to none. And you see, when you have a context of what is public, you have no moral drive to protect it because it seems to be for everyone. That which is yours, and the emotion you have to your car and a public vehicle, those are two different things. But the day that we learn that which is public is also as good as private, on account of the fact that we are the ones who bought it, it is ours and should be taken care of. And then we go to above the normal interaction with public affairs with a distance to our emotions and our general psyche. I think that's an advancement. So it means, therefore, we must know in the first place that that which is public is ours. We must protect it. But when you're administering public affairs, you must do it because you understand morally you are called upon as a higher calling to administer that for the private citizen of the country. First, you're a private citizen yourself, and that you are doing it for the private citizen. I think we need to get there, but we'll do it if it is put into context of education and it is taught to us. If we leave it to the church, I think we'll be trying harder. We should be trying harder to have everyone go to church every day, and that we have to do exams in church for purposes of instilling the morals in our national psyche.
Oscar, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, you know, I'm the one who brought about this debate about moral capital that's supposed to be provided by the church.
Yes.
Simply because for the first time I'm seeing the church coming hard on government, which I've missed for many years. When we lost, where did we lose the clergy? You know, we had the guitarists of this world, we had Bishop Mugi of this world, we had Okulu of this world, who always came hard on the state. Why? Because even at the first century, the church felt they were above the state in terms of control. And now that is, at the first century, again, I think the church has the responsibility to give guidance to society. Yeah, as much as he's talking about that we need to be taught. Yes, I was taught in Sunday school. The Sunday school should be there, and people should be taught in Sunday school. The morals that we taught in Sunday school are not necessarily the things we were taught in school when we were in class 1. Because when we were in class 1, on weekdays, Monday to Friday, we went to formal school. But on Saturday and Sunday, SDA and other people who are Christians went to Sunday school. In that Sunday school, there were morals that were being taught, which we got to learn at that level, which I completely agree. I still think that the church clearly the church has to teach internal truth, for example. They have that moral obligation, internal truth. They are the only people who can stand with the truth today, tomorrow, even when things are so hard on people. Get me right? I still don't think that even the abductions that we're talking about, the state has the courage to abduct Olesa Pete or to abduct some of these clergymen, even what they say. Get me right? As opposed to what I say in TV. I can walk out of this TV station and then when I get to the gate, somebody picks me and then Oscar is just lost after that TV interview. But if the people who are men of the clergy are picked and abducted, it will be a big thing. So the state cannot go against them. So they have the moral authority, the moral intent to stand with the truth. Unfortunately, of late, the clergy have been part of repeating the sloganeering of the political system. They should be ahead of politics. They should be the people who sit up there and then politicians down there. But they've come down. Last week and the other previous week, I saw them coming hard. My friend Godia said that they threatened even to declare a curse on corrupt leaders, that we will declare a curse on them. Why are they having that position of thinking that they can declare a curse on somebody, right? This is what's supposed to happen because we want to deal with the moral decay. We want to deal with moral decay. Last week I was in a funeral. I've lost a friend who was a manager at Wells Fargo. And one of the mourners who was speaking on front said that the Luo, our people, the killings like this ones, this is not an archaic to the Luo community. I mean, you can rob, but just taking somebody's blood, this is not something that is taboos of our people do this. So I'm saying the problem that we have, we've lost morals. I'm telling you, for example, if EACC worked, because we're looking at that integrity, chapter 6, if EACC worked properly, nobody or a quarter of people in this parliament could have not even gotten tickets to get to those positions. So that the EACC didn't, just stamping. People with corruption cases, people with what, they went into parliament. But these people, if you subject them to check into whatever they've made, the money they've made, morally, it is wrong. So we've lost morals, and now it's coming to our youth. For example, I'm talking about still the church. How do you explain that in Wajir or in Mandera, they don't have an alcoholic problem among the youth? It is because of religion. It is because of religion. It is because of the relationship of religion to alcohol.
But they have a problem with Mogoka.
With other problem.
They have a problem.
And I'm talking about alcohol now. I'm not talking about Mogoka. Mogoka
is also another.
It's not alcohol. It's not alcohol. I'm talking about alcohol, which we have a problem with mostly in central Kenya. Again, if we have a problem with Mogoka, if we have a discussion of Mogoka, they have a serious problem with Mogoka, which I completely agree. But now again, what I'm saying, that religion plays a very big part in morality of society, which if you leave it to government, people in government, and we say politics is a dirty game, pastors, if they come into politics and continue sloganeering, and even when the Gen Zs were revolting, one of the things that the Gen Zs said, we don't like it when we see our politicians address congregation and give money to the churches. You get me right? We should just ban those Harambes. Okay, for the one that was in Soweto, where President money has to be returned, I think that was done in a bad faith because those people asked, and he gave them money. But now there was no evidence, according to me, that money that Sakaja and President Ruto gave out was proceeds of corruption. But I know that churches have received money which, if traced back, could be proceeds of corruption, and they've enjoyed going into bed with politicians. But politics is a dirty game. People in politics have dirty things, dirty money, and unless we have a system where the religious section of society will rise up to the occasion and be the owners of internal truth, then we can deal with corruption, deal with things that shift, and say the truth when it needs to happen.
You see, what I want to say is, you have really explained about the church being involved. I think everybody, when it comes to moral fabric, everybody should be involved, including you, as somebody's father.
I'm saying guidance. I'm saying guidance.
That's okay. You're also supposed to start from your home. Charity
agree.
begins at home. We are not going to bag this thing into just on the religious aspect alone.
Let me cut you short. We cross over to the CBD where Alan Aoko is stationed right now. He's trying to get the views of the Kenyans regarding what the president is going to address in Parliament later on, later today at 2:30 p.m. We can cross over to Alan Aoko, who is in CBD. Over to you, Alan.
A very good morning to you this very chilly Nairobi morning here at the CBD in Nairobi. Indeed, we are sampling views of the state of the nation. We came here early in the morning just to see the mood of Kenyans at this time. You remember, today is that day when the president will have to talk to Kenyans and tell them the state of the nation this afternoon at the parliament buildings. But let us also just listen to a few Kenyans to tell us what they expect the president to say and how the state of the nation is according to them. Welcome, sir. Maybe you can start by telling us your name and what you do and what is the state of the nation according to you, and maybe tell us what do you expect the president to tell us today afternoon.
Okay, kwa majina naitwa Professor ama naitwa James Professor. Okay, mimi ni mkaaji wa hapa Nairobi na tumekuja hapa kutafuta riziki. Na by the way tumetembea, ujumi ni mbaya na tunataka president at least haongee kitu ambayo inaweza kutusaidia sisi kama wananchi. Kila kitu iko juu, uchumi iko juu, vyakula ziko juu, kila kitu generally iko juu. So tunataka yeye atupe matumaini na tuelezee jinsi ambavyo hizi vitu sitashuka chini, ndio at least na sisi tuweze kuishi maisha ya kawaida. Na kila ambacho ninaomba rais haweze kutuelezea ni kwamba atuelezee jinsi ambavyo tunaweza kaa na amani sisi kama wananchi kwa jumla, kwa sababu tunasikia kila mahali ya kwamba kuna watu ambao wameuliwa. Ndio at least na sisi tukue na security ya kutosha. Ndio.
Kulingana na vile awali nchi ilikuwa, unaona labda hata mahali tuko saizi tutaweza kufaulu na uchumi vile inasemekana sasa inaimarika na asilimia 2.7.
Okay, kulingana na mambo ya uchumi bado iko juu na mahali tunaelekea mahali kubaya sana. Sasa kila ambacho tunastahili kufanya ni kwamba yeye kama kiongozi wetu, yeye ndio huwa anafaa kutuelezea jinsi ambavyo hii uchumi itakavyo kuwa sasa siku za mbeleni. Ndio.
Asante sana kwa kutuongelesha. Wacha pia tuongeleshe mwenzetu mwingine kijana. Don't know English or Swahili? Swahili, yeah. Just tell us your name and what you do and talk to us, talk to Kenyans. Tell them how you feel the economy is and what do you expect the president to say this afternoon.
Okay, kwa majina naitwa Sarangutu Dennis. Mimi ni mfanyikazi tu hapa Nairobi, kupambana tu kuhustle. Kitu imenileta hapa hivi leo, tulikuwa tumepanga maandamano azini. Nimesikia rais leo anaenda kupitisha ile mkataba ya ya finance bill. Sisi tumeka mku-reject juu. Naona hiyo hatuoni kama itatupeleka mbali, haisaidii wa Kenya.
Leo anakuja kuhutubia Kenya hali ya uchumi, akuji kupitisha mkataba ya finance bill.
So kitu na expect aongelee ni kuhusu hustle ya vijana manze, tunateseka manze. Mtu kama mimi sasa nimekuja street, sina kitu ya kufanya kejani, nimeona tu acha nikamchill street alafu nirudi makejani.
Asante sana kwa kutuongelesha. Yes, as you've heard there from Sudo, that are just some of the sentiments of Kenyans here this morning. Of course, we'll be pitching tent here throughout the afternoon as well before the president takes the podium. But we'll be sampling more Kenyans here. And of course, also maybe if we can also get some businesses or two just to give us a feel of how businesses are doing. It's a mixed bag. Some businesses have been reporting good earnings, especially this week and past few weeks, especially when you look at banking institutions, many of them saying that Kenyans are depositing more. Some of them saying perhaps maybe they are worried that their cash is not safe. That's why they're depositing. We've seen even as latest as last evening, some banks reporting good money, but small businesses seem to be pointing out that they're still suffering and struggling. And of course, there are some of the people who will want to hear the president say something about the economic climate for them, especially since small businesses account for 80% of labor in this country, and they are a big engine for the economy here in Kenya. Of course, we'll get that to you as soon as we can, but for now, back to you in studio.
Indeed, that is Alan Aoko, who is joining us from the Central Business District, talking to Kenyans concerning the State of the Nation address that is supposed to happen later on in the day at Parliament buildings. And one of the things that have been said by one of the person who has been interviewed is that he's expecting the president to, in his speech, to give hope. I don't know, Dr. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think he's very right. The level of joblessness in this country is so alarming. And then what you want, you know, these commissions. I think a commission should be formed also, which is noble, to address the level of joblessness in this country. How can you create jobs? How can you make it easy even for foreign investors to come and invest here to give these children jobs? Because you see, they've gone to school, they come back, they are just in the house. Are you saying? And then most slogans in the past, they used to say like, education is the key to success. You know, I don't think that thing has ever gotten out of mindsets, mindsets. Of course, it's nice to be educated, but also our children have also taken it up in the sense that when I have a degree, I have to be able to get certain amount of money. They equate education to money. They do not equate it to, in the sense that when you are educated, it's better when you are not, because even if you're going to have money, you're going to know how to manage it. You're going to know how to manage yourself. And many other things. I agree too much. The cost of living, sure. And then you get confused. You know, like we used to buy unga at a certain amount. Now it comes down, you still can't see the difference. There's just something that is ailing in this country that I don't understand. It is high, it is low. I think there's just something that is happening that that is not, somebody else cracked a joke that somebody employed or not employed, they're all having the same struggle. I don't know whether you have heard of that. And then I would say, I think among the issues in this country primarily should be, one, the health sector, 2, education sector, 3, joblessnesses, the joblessness of the Kenyan young people. I either to reduce the retirement age so that we can have fresh blood, and then to also kind of have some kind of directives to the private sector who are having the business in this country, so that you see now like the AGPO, the 30% for, you know, like the tenders, to be the employers to have some regulations, like, you know, of course, even if I'm going to have my company, I'll look at mostly my relatives and stuff. Doesn't matter. If we can have some regulation that we can have in every private company, be it in the health sector, wherever place, be it in education, to have 30% of the Gen Zs. You know, the Gen Zs, the age starts from, what age are these Gen Zs? Is it from 18 to
20?
35? 35, From there we go to millennial. Yeah, the Gen Zs, if we can have 30% as a regulation, as a rule, as a law in this country, we are going to reduce the joblessness in this country, because if we are going to rely on them being absorbed in the government, all of them, and the government currently, I think it is choked with the wage bill, that is going to make the difference. If the government can just promise us in his report, can promise us some of these pertinent issues categorically, injecting answers and hope to Kenyans. The Ministry of Health, Education, joblessness in this country. And then I was trying also to say something about, you talked of the social, the moral fabric. You know, in our education, like Wakili has rightfully said about Japan, how you see they are developed. We have never asked ourselves as a country, why are we still developing after so long? We are still a developing country, It's because our systems are all compromised. Because you see now, like the life skills, the president yesterday was talking about having a caravan. He has put like 100 million aside to take care of the caravans. I am not going to listen to your issues at a close level. You know, we cannot generalize issues. But the life skills that was being taught in school was like absorbed in other subjects. It's not treated as a main subject. We have very many guiding and counseling experts in this country who do not know which sector they're supposed to go. They should go and look for them jobs. Why can't the government take mental health as a very important aspect? Because Kenyans are sick. The president is leading sick people. And then we are sick, we do not know we are sick. We know, we are operating in such a sense that we do not take your mental state. You know, if mentally you are not okay, you know, that is why even our children, as they grow up, you know, when they reach maybe to high school, they are going to university, there is nobody who tells them how to handle the dating game, how to realize, how to notice a risky behavior of someone you're dealing with. Our children are on social media. They do not know how to physically deal with people. You know, when I see you, I'll see your body language. The way you look at me, is this person dangerous? But we always, you know, you see them even on, everybody's on social media. They do not know how to deal with human beings they see physically. I want to get your sentiments on what the two gentlemen have said. And the issue of jobs has always been a thorn in the flesh, in the fewest of words possible. Your reactions to whatever has
before
been.
I react to that,
yes.
I just heard actually talk about Kenyans being sick. I didn't realize that we are all sick. Maybe we need to close the country and get therapy and get a therapist maybe to counsel us. But anyway, issues of joblessness. What I can discuss is how has this regime, because today we are having, he is discussing it because there will be a State of Nation address. And he's reacting, or he's looking at what he expects the president to discuss in the State of Union address. So he expects the president to say something to help his situation, right? Now, what has the president done, or what has the regime done to deal with joblessness since it came into power? That is the two years that we had, right? And is it working? For instance, there's been this thing of the president going abroad to look for jobs and all this. You know, he has done that. And there are many people who've traveled abroad to look for them. That means that, for the last 2 years, the percentage that has benefited from that type of idea could be 1% or 2%. That means it doesn't really help the percentage of joblessness we have in the country, which we are now, I think we must be at either 40 or 50%, or even more than that now. Countries like welfare states like Sweden and Denmark, I think, are still at 14%. America will be like 20%, but we could be at 60%. So that means that unemployment, there are two things also. There's unemployment and underemployment, where you have a station where you have learned so much. Among these young people, I think they have so much knowledge, even if you give them jobs, most of the time they get underemployed because they have so much talent that when you give them, for example, if you give whatever the jobs that are being looked for abroad, what are the jobs? What jobs are they getting? Like domestic workers. You know, some of these guys who go do domestic work jobs are university degree graduates. So if you go and get him a job to work as a domestic worker, you've really underemployed this person. You've given them jobs, yes, but shauri ya moyo, you know, there is not the job that they want to do. So what needs to happen? First of all, for you to build an economy, make sure that unskilled people in your state have something to do. This group that is skilled, the ones with the degrees and the ones with the master's degree can take care of themselves. But the unskilled one, the Juakali sector, we have to do radical policy changes. For example, importation of this finished good from China, it's going to kill just the local industry. Develop the Juakali sector, because even whatever we do in the Juakali sector, the carpenters, the whatever, the people who do those hand jobs should be able to work. And how do you do that? is developing, intentionally putting funds into that sector, giving in loans and grants to that sector, developing TVT so that we produce a lot of plumbers, a lot of mechanics, a lot of masonry, a lot of people who are doing that type of stuff. But the more we bring in stuff which are finished from China, at the end of the day, we just shrink in the job opportunities that we have for our young people. If you call for a rally, you don't even have, nowadays, politicians don't call for rallies. Gachagua just needs to drive into CBD, and within 2 minutes, it's full. People are not working. Raila Odinga needs just to go drive into Uhuru Park, and within 2 minutes, it's full, because these people are not working. The population you see in those rallies is so big. When you had the Gen Z revolution here, the population that deserted this town, you will be asked, where have these people been? And are all these people not working? And why we have serious problems like the Mogoka is talking about and the alcoholic problem? These are the repercussions of unemployment. But now what we have to do is, like Trump says, he thinks about America. Close borders, everybody who is bringing things from China, stop it. Let's have jobs here. Anybody who's taking jobs out, bring it back to the country, because we need it here. I think we need jobs back to the country, and we can do it.
Wakili, take it as a closing mark, react to whatever was said by those two gentlemen.
Well, there is the argument of legitimate expectation, being that when you go to school, you are endowed to a bracket of comfort that is promised of you by government, by society. We create people behavior as a society by in the manner in which we interact with them. Suffice it to say, therefore, that if we educate a person using our resources, we must then go to the extra mile of providing an environment for that person to work and provide for himself. If we don't do that, then we are guilty. We are guilty to that person on account of what should be expected of society. Two, government responsibility, by whatever means, must go to the extra mile of providing opportunities for people to be employed or to employ themselves. Meaning, therefore, create jobs on, either from the private sector or public sector. And lastly, the joblessness is also an indication of one sector working and another sector not working, complementing the sector that is working. For instance, the education sector has improved by and large by producing graduates and people endowed with knowledge. However, the environment or the arm of government or whatever environment ought to subsist, that which then increases the availability of jobs and opportunities is not available. And that disconnect is what is bringing all these problems. Therefore, at the production level of the graduates and people and youth from school must be complemented by whatever means. I agree that the government has done a lot in terms of trying to address this issue. It's just that, one, it may not be complementing the opportunities versus what is available as a resource, human resource. And number two, it's not doing enough to enhance that environment and capacity to be able to absorb. If that is done, I believe we're going to improve the structures. It can be done that we can do that by ordinarily attracting foreign direct investment, and number two, by making capital available in the pockets of Kenyans in order to invest, and number three, making funds available. That's what Kibaki did largely. Interests are low and people can borrow. And therefore, you do not have, for instance, to say, I am organizing what we call affordable housing, and those units are going to employ people. It should be that the private sector is doing affordable housing, and therefore people get employed with the private sector. The ideal of a government, therefore, should not even engage in business itself. If you provide the environments in an ideal capitalistic environment, will be that the private sector thrives and therefore society thrives, because then the production of the human resource is complemented with opportunities that are available to the human resource available.
Okay. Thank you so much for making time to come on Good Morning Kenya and talk about various issues affecting the nation. That is Oscar Onyango, a political analyst, Dr. Evelyn Ogendo, who is also a political analyst, and Wakili George Kithi, advocate of the High Court and also a political analyst, joining us here on Good Morning Kenya. This is where we cap this conversation. My name is Mike. We don't go too far. Vivian Degwa is up next with more. Good morning.
you for joining us on Healthy Living. Stay connected to Voice of America at voanews.com. A look at your kidneys and how they impact your health. And an expert discusses chronic kidney disease and how to protect yourself. And Ivorian psychologist Noor Bakayoko shares some insights on bullying and what can be done.
It's important to avoid major events or major health crises.
How do you know if your cough is due to a serious condition? We'll have some answers. Stay well
and strive to make every day a healthy day.
Say bye-bye to FOMO, the fear of missing out, by downloading the KBC Online app that gives you access to everything you love. Get the latest news, sport,
is a class
music, entertainment news, live radio, and so much more at the palm of your hands. To get the app, simply search KBC Mobile Digital App in your Google Play or App Store and download the app. Catch what you want, anytime, anywhere. Stay connected. Stay ahead with KBC Mobile Digital App.
Born in 1948 in a small village in Kakamega, Newton Wanjala Kulundu went to Navaholo Primary School before proceeding to Namirama Intermediate School. He sat his ordinary and advanced level examination at Government African School Kakamega and Kenyatta College before enrolling at the University of Nairobi for a bachelor degree in medicine. He capped his academic studies with a master's degree in public health in California, United States. Thereafter, he worked for the Ministry of Health, East Africa Industries, and Brookbond, Kenya, before taking up politics. Contesting on a forum for the Restoration of Democracy Kenya Ford Kenya ticket in 1997, he defeated Javan Omani of the Kenya African National Union KANU and joined Parliament, where he chaired the Parliamentary Health Committee. 5 years later, he was elected under the banner of the National Rainbow Coalition (NAC) and was appointed Minister for Environment and Wildlife in January 2003. Kulundu's assistant minister was the Tetu Member of Parliament, world-acclaimed environmentalist and political activist, founder of the Green Belt movement, and later Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai. Together, they laid the ground for the establishment of the Kenya Forest Service Act of 2005. Hailed as one of the most stringent wildlife laws in the world, the act made it difficult for ministers to excise government forest for development projects, as had been the norm in the past. It also set up the Kenya Forest Service, a better resourced state parastatal, to take over management of forests. Kulundu was then transferred to the Ministry of Labour and Human Resource Development. It had come to pass that while the political ground in his constituency shifted in favour of the Orange Democratic Movement towards the end of his second term as MP, Kulundu stood firm behind his party and chose to seek re-election of the Mwai Kibaki's Party of National Unity in 2007. He lost at the ballot to ODM's one-term Atanas Manyala Kea. Kulundu died 3 years later in 2010. Jackie Wambiru, The Cabinet.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Good Morning Kenya. My name is Vivian Degwa, and right now we get into a very different conversation, and we will be looking at food security as well as food safety. And joining me for that conversation is one Mr. Julius Nyabicha. He is a food safety and food security expert. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Vivian.
You're good this morning?
Good. Yeah, waiting for the State of the Nation address.
Yes.
And I'm sure they're going to talk about food safety and food security.
That's what you're expecting from the president's
speech
today.
Of course, some of us are experts in this area.
Yeah.
We expect that the president is going to talk about food safety as well as food security. We need to feed our people.
Absolutely. It's a very important conversation for sure. Maybe if you may just get to tell us more about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Julius Nyabicha. I'm a food safety and food security expert. I work with the Cereal Growers Association, CGA, which is a national non-for-profit organization that brings together farmers, smallholder farmers, medium-scale farmers, as well as large-scale farmers. For a long time in this country, we do not have an organization that brings together all these three types of farmers. But it is important to note that the food that we consume, the food production in this country, comes from all these three categories of farmers. We do advocacy and policy. We sit down with the government using evidence that we gather from the field so that we can come up with good policies and the policies that can enable the farmers to produce more and to produce safe food. But other than that, we also do technical backstopping and technical services we offer to our farmers to ensure that at the end of the day, farmers adopt technology and they're able to produce efficiently and effectively, cost-effectively, so that they can undertake farming as a business. We also facilitate the sharing of information between farmers so that at the end of the day, we have farmers that are informed, farmers that can be able to borrow leave from the rest of the farmers all over the world and from other counties on what they do. We have a footprint in 32 counties in this country, and therefore we are serving Kenyan farmers, bringing them together, ensuring that food is produced safely and sufficiently so that we can get to have food to eat as a country.
All right. Even as we get into our topic of conversation today, and as you've mentioned earlier, you're expecting the president to also say something on food security and food safety of the country. Probably what exactly would you love to hear from his speech concerning that?
Yeah, for a long time, this country has not had food security. We import a lot of food. And a country that is not food secure, in many cases, is also not secure in terms of strategic security. And therefore, the moment you ensure that your people are well fed and there is food security, that translates to national security. And that's why I would expect the president to talk more about food security. I know a lot of measures have been put in place, especially the fertilizer subsidy program, which has catalyzed good production. I saw a communique from the CS Agriculture the other day that we have got about 76 million 50 kilo bags of maize in this country right now, which is quite a good improvement. That translates to about 42 million 90 kilogram bags. And we are moving towards food sufficiency, especially when it comes to maize, which is our staple food. But then we need to ask ourselves many questions. What infrastructure do we have to store this food, to preserve this food, so that we have this food in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year, before we do another production? So these are some of the issues that we expect to hear the president talk about on which measures we are putting in place, especially for inputs, which measures we are putting in place for post-harvest handling, through which we are losing about 30% of our produce, especially grains and pulses, which measures we are putting in place to close our porous borders. For instance, right now, there is rumor that a lot of maize is getting through the borders to Uganda, which is not a good sign for us. Once we do the production, once we put a lot of resources, once the government invests in inputs like fertilizer and we do production, we expect that this food first is going to benefit the Kenyan people, before it is exported elsewhere. So we need as a people to have a very good balance sheet to evaluate how much do we produce, how much do we export, how much do we import, and if we do not have enough to export, then we can close our borders and say we are not going to export because we do not have food to feed our people. Yep.
So as it is as a country, would you say okay, you've clearly said we are not food secure yet. We are food insecure. Maybe what are some of the determinants of food security?
Some of the issues that make us food insecure are the perennial challenges that we have had. One, we must not close our eyes and sweep it under the carpet that we do not have challenges of climate change. We have climate change that we must now start to address as a country. Climate change comes in different forms, and therefore, for instance, as an institution, Cereal Growers Association, we are bringing together farmers, and we are trying now to teach the farmers on climate resilient agriculture. We mitigate the climate change. We are trying to do mixed farming. We are trying to make sure that we are doing regenerative agriculture. We are trying to, because if you look at it, for instance, sometimes back in Kitale, it was very easy for you to produce 40, 50 bags of maize per acre. But today, not anymore because of the effects of climate change. So we must appreciate that we have climate change, that we must, the government should be in the forefront in addressing. Number two, we must also start building a culture of diversification in terms of what we consume. Most of us are so rigid in what we consume. If you do not see ugali on your table, you have not seen food. So as a people, we must also start to diversify on what we consume. And number three, we must start venturing into value chains that are more resilient, especially to climate change. Not just maize, not just rice, not just wheat, but we must now go into probably sweet potatoes, into beans, and other value chains. We must now start to produce where we think we have a comparative advantage. Most of us just produce, for instance, maize in areas that are not fit for maize production. So we must start to do this. Number four, as a people, and probably through the government must start enacting enabling policies. We must sit down with the people, even when we do policies, to make sure that these are policies that will trickle down to the farmers, and the farmers are going to benefit out of these policies. And most important is the budget allocation. We all understand that agriculture is devolved, but we have not seen that effective development of agriculture. At county level, the officers are not facilitated, there are few not facilitated, and therefore we don't see the extension service provision right down to the farmer. And more budget should be allocated to the Department of Agriculture at the county level, to the Ministry of Agriculture at national level. So these are issues that we must do if indeed we must curb the issue of food insecurity in this country.
In the country.
Yeah.
There's something you touched on, and I want us to get onto that. You touched on diversification, and you mentioned about us not just relying on one thing, and not us being able to diversify in what we also put on our tables as our meals. Maybe what are the potential risks in over-reliance of just one crop when it comes to food security? Because as a country, I think we overly rely on maize. So maybe what are the potential risks on just over-relying on one particular crop for food security?
Yeah, well, when we define food security, actually we talk about 3 or 4 aspects. We talk about availability, is that food available? We talk about affordability, can you afford that food? We talk about nutrition, is that food nutritious? I don't think you can talk about food security if you're talking about only one value chain, about one crop, because it cannot give you sufficient nutrients, and therefore that nutrition part in food security definition is left out. And that's the reason why every time when we talk about food security, we must open up our minds. We must start talking about don't over-rely on one. For instance, if there is a disease, or there are pests and the diseases that will affect that crop, that value chain that you call your staple food, at the end of the day, you might not have it. Let me give you a very good example. Kenya, wheat is, I think, the second most important value chain. Our demand for the country is about 24 million bags. What we produce locally, like our projection for this season, is only 1.7 to 2 million bags. So we have a deficit of 22 million bags that we must import. And where do we import from? We import from Russia, we import from Ukraine, where there is war. So if that's the case, and sometimes you're not able to get this, even if you have money, sometimes you might have your money, but you cannot get the food that you require because of the challenges, because of the dynamics of what's going on in the world. If you don't get that, then what happens? It means that you'll do without that value chain. Or it will become so expensive because of the logistics of getting that food to the country. And that's why we must now start opening up our eyes and saying, instead of talking about wheat, for instance, can we start talking about another value chain? And then, two, can we look for means and ways of increasing our local production? Instead of talking about 1.7 to 2 million bags per year, let us talk about 5 next year, let us go to 10, so that we can start talking about, we can produce at least 50% of our local demand for wheat. So that is the danger of over-relying on imports. And I must mention that Kenyans, we have a peculiar behavior of thinking that whatever that is imported is good. We take a lot of pleasure in talking about, I am consuming imported food, which is not a good thing. Let us start being proud of what we produce locally and start consuming what we produce locally. We have our own sorghum, we have our own wimb, we have our own millet, we have our own sweet potatoes. Let us start consuming that. Over and above that, I know the research institutions in this country have done a lot of research, and now we have got very nutritious value chains. Like, for instance, sometimes back, sweet potatoes was not very nutritious, but right now, because of the research and the varieties that have been developed, we've got very nutritious sweet potatoes, which we can consume as a staple food. So let us start opening up our minds, and let us start thinking about and outside the traditional value chains that we call staple foods in this country.
Maybe what challenges would you say we are facing as a country in terms of food security? I know you've talked about climate change, which is something that affects, you know, the entire world, if I may say so. But what other challenges maybe do we face as a country in matters of food security?
One of the challenges that we have faced in this country, especially those of us who are in the sector, is the land tenure system. This is a country where a lot of people have a lot of idle land. And sometimes if you have to lease that land from these people that have it, they will lease it to you maybe for 1 year. In 1 year, you cannot effectively undertake measures that would look into soil health. You cannot invest effectively in soil health when you know that you have this land for 1 year. And therefore, you cannot have long-term investments on this piece of land. So the land tenure system in Kenya should change. If land is for agriculture and an investor is taking up this land, an example is like in France. The minimum is about 9 years if you have to lease land for agricultural purposes. So in Kenya, I think we need to change. If you are leasing land for agricultural purposes, let it be long-term so that you can also be able to invest effectively and probably invest more in soil health. Number two, infrastructure. We do not have sufficient, when you look at Nairobi and maybe in most county headquarters, you see good roads. But when you go deeper and in the rural areas where food production is taking place, the infrastructure is still very poor. Number three, there is something that we call post-harvest loss management and post-harvest handling. In grains and pulses, for instance, we lose up to 30% of what we produce because of poor post-harvest management. The government needs to come in and invest effectively in infrastructure to do with storage, transportation, storage, processing, so that whatever is produced is not lost. We do not lose that 30%. So this is something else that we need to do. This is a big challenge that we must face and we must also tackle. So we have talked about infrastructure.
Yeah.
We have talked about post-harvest and loss management. We are talking about the land tenure system. And we are talking about extension service provision, which is virtually, we must look at each other and agree that the extension service provision in this country is dead. Actually, the small percentage of that's being given is coming from the private sector. Okay. The non-for-profit organization, the NGOs, plus input companies. And what's the danger of doing that? Input companies, for instance, if they have to give you extension, their extension will be skewed towards their product. It might not be a very balanced extension service that is given to the farmers. It will be skewed towards their product. But the government needs to come in and invest effectively in extension service provision. Finally, we must talk about technology. For a long time, this country has lagged behind when it comes to technology. For instance, there is what we used to call the fertilizer revolution. Many countries across the world embraced the issue of fertilizer. The average use of fertilizer in many countries is about 200 kilos per acre. Come to Kenya, the average use of fertilizer is about 20, 30 kilos per acre. You can see the difference. Yeah. You cannot produce if you do not use sufficient and the right fertilizer. And that's why now we say when we talk about regenerative agriculture, yes, we're using this fertilizer, but now we must start to bring in other issues about mixed farming so that you can be able to get manure, you can be able to see on how to reduce on inorganic fertilizers and come to organic fertilizers, but that is a meticulous process that must be undertaken with care and with time, maybe 10 years, then we should have transitioned. But for now, we are depending on fertilizer. When we talk about technology again, we must talk about biotechnology. Yeah. Seeds, technological advancement. For instance, let me give you an example. We talk so much about GMOs. Yeah. And every time you mention about GMO in this country, it's like people are taken aback. Most people say, that's not a good thing to talk about. Yeah. But let us open our eyes. Let us demystify some of these technologies. Let us face these technologies with open minds. That when you talk about GMO, for instance, listen to the pros and the cons. Yeah. Let the experts tell you what GMO is before you make a decision. That is important. When we talk about technology again, we are talking about mechanization. Labor is becoming very expensive. So when we talk about mechanization, let us look for means and ways of having, if it's a tractor that is serving a certain village, then it can be moving from one farm to another. If we have smallholder farmers, if you've done the harvesting and now you are doing the post-harvest handling, you're threshing your maize, don't stop beating your maize with sticks. Start now having what we call the threshers, that they can be able to move from one farmer to another and doing that efficiently so that we reduce on post-harvest losses. That is what we call a technology. And at the end of the day, if we put that together, then we have a farmer that is well enabled. And finally, when we talk about farming in Kenya, it's a whole value chain. The agribusiness value chain is long. There is the production bit. Yeah. There are those that are giving you the inputs. There are those that are giving you the agrochemicals, taking care of the crops on the farm. There are those that are handling the harvesting bit, the post-harvesting bit, those who are doing the value addition, and finally your food on the table. When we talk about a Kenyan farmer, let us not think about a Kenyan farmer as that person that is doing the actual production, growing. you can, especially the young people, the youth and the women, along these nodes on the agribusiness value chain, you can get yourself there. You could be that is offering the inputs and advisory and at that level. You are a farmer. You could be aggregating after the harvesting has been done and putting it, your produce together for the off-takers. That is farming. You could be developing an app that will help the farmers in terms of digitization. That is still farming. You could be that who is doing processing. That is still within the agribusiness value chain. And therefore, let us see where we can play. Not everybody can be in actual production, but let us see how to bring the youth. And finally, I wanted to tell you, one of the major challenges that we have in this country is the aging population of the Kenyan farmer. We need to bring the youth to agriculture. Agriculture is a science. Agriculture is very dynamic. It's a dynamic science that we need to bring the youth so that they can be able to start engaging and taking over. And how do we do that? Many ways. Make agriculture a bit sexy. Make it a bit attractive. Let us bring the apps into agriculture. Let us mechanize agriculture. Let us have the youth get themselves into areas that are more exciting for them. Let them develop the apps for agriculture. And let us stop portraying agriculture as something that is a fallback plan when you have lost everything, when you don't have anything. No. A lot of young people today are making a lot of money from agriculture, and therefore let us make agriculture a bit younger, as it were.
Okay. And on that note, we'll take a break. Don't go too far. We'll be back to continue with this conversation. And Mr. Julius had mentioned to me that Tanzania is food secure at the moment. So what is it that they're doing right that we can emulate as a country in order to get to that status as well? Don't you go too far. We'll be back in a bit.
Are you looking for a brand-growing outdoor advertising with beautiful simplicity and an artistically inspired choice? Look no further. Our 40 years of credible reputation and experience will give you exceptional brand traction.
Nimekwambia kuwa wazazi wangu wanataka kunioza cha lazima. Unasemaje?
Ni dhihirisho kuwa hutaki chochote kutoka kwangu.
Rama! Rama!
Chumbani mwako unamolala wewe mwenyewe,
We are located at Corner Plaza, 4th floor on Parklands Road. Take Talk. Get your brand on the talk with City Clock.
Nimekwambia kuwa wazazi wangu wanataka kunioza cha lazima. Unasemaje?
Ni dhihirisho kuwa hutaki chochote kutoka kwangu.
Rama! Rama!
Chumbani mwako unamolala wewe mwenyewe, Utakata vipi wewe simui hata kama hujamuua? Watu watakuelewa vipi?
Rama, hebu karibia hapa.
Unakumbuka siku fulani ambayo ulikuja ukapata jamaa?
We. Kama cherehani, Fiata hilo domo lako wewe. Mwenyekiti na katibu wake. Katika masuala ya umbea tu.
welcome back. And before we took that break, Mr. Julius was just speaking about us ensuring that we kind of modernize agriculture in order for it to be appealing to the younger generation. And you also mentioned, you know, when you talk about agriculture, we're not just talking about the farming bit of it. There's a whole spectrum of it, and that is what should be sold to the younger people maybe, so that they can also get into or jump onto this industry that is the agriculture industry. And I also mentioned that you had talked to me about Tanzania being food secure as it is at the moment, a status that we are yet to achieve. So maybe what are they doing right? And what are some things that we can borrow from them in order for us to also get to that status?
Yeah, Vivian, many times we get food, we import our food from Tanzania, particularly maize, beans, rice. We import from Tanzania, fruits. A lot of horticultural produce we also import from Tanzania. But why is Tanzania food secure and we are not? Why is Tanzania having a food surplus and we are having a food deficit? I have worked in Tanzania as an expatriate for about 8 years. So I can be able to compare what happens in Tanzania and what happens in Kenya. The first thing I think about is policy. Tanzania at policy level, I've got a very enabling and a consistent agricultural policy. For instance, in 2009, they came up with what they call Kilimo Kwanza, agriculture first policy. And that has gone through, it does not matter what regime, that is a policy that they have, that agriculture has to be given its fair, it's on a fair place on the table. And they have consistently done that, putting agriculture first. And how do they do it? One, they've got a very vibrant research system, and they actually make use of what they get from research. In Kenya, we have a tendency of having very savvy research institutions by the government, funded by the government. But what we get from those research institutions does not transit to the commercial, to the market. So in Tanzania, they make sure that whatever has been researched gets to the market. The government is very supportive. The extension service is still working, and they invest heavily on extension. Number two, Tanzania is more climate resilient when it comes to climate as compared to Kenya. If you look at this country, the many parts of the lower eastern and the northeastern part of this country, it's very dry. It's almost it's semi-arid. But in Tanzania, most parts are still having enough rainfall, and they are not as dry as Kenya. Why? Because they take care of the environment, and this is where it is most important. Tanzanians are very good in taking care of the environment. If you were to drive from Arusha to Dar es Salaam to whatever destination, it is like you'll be driving through a forest. So they take care of the environment, and the environment is taking care of themselves. The land use and the land tenure system, I've already talked about it, that it is one of our doing in Kenya. In Tanzania, land is owned by the government, and you can get long-term leases if you want to invest in agriculture. Not in Kenya, where land is very privatized. And if you want to get probably even idle land for agriculture, it's very hard for you to do that. Infrastructure. Tanzanians have invested very well in rural infrastructure because that's where agriculture takes place. Kenya has invested very well in infrastructure, and especially in urban areas. But we are thanking the devolution. The county governments are now doing a great job when it comes to infrastructure and upgrading the rural roads for this to happen. Another issue is that Tanzania is very good in keeping their food balance sheet. They cannot export a single grain if they know that they do not have enough for their country. Kenya, I don't think we are very keen on that. Sometimes we export even when we do not have enough in the country. So they are very good. They take care of their borders. The borders are not porous, and they ensure that they have enough food in their country before they can export. Something else that they do is diversification of value chains, which we don't do in Kenya, especially food. Deliberately, they know that if you do not have enough food, you do not have dignity. It does not matter how much money you have, but if you have no food, you have no dignity at all. So in Tanzania, they have given priority to production of food, rice, self-sufficient, and actually exporting to Kenya. Self-sufficient in maize, with a lot of surplus, which they export to Kenya, and many other value chains, horticultural produce, they've got stuff. But Kenya, when you look at it, we have put so much emphasis on tea, we're putting so much emphasis on coffee, on horticultural produce meant for export, at the expense of our food production. I would, if I were in the policy-making table, on the policy-making table, I would start thinking seriously about food production and food security. I have already said it. There is a very thin line between food security and national security. So our food security is not doing very well, and Tanzania is doing very well. So their research and the way they look at food production is totally different. They have got a very good balance sheet. They know what's getting out of the country, what's in the country. Their data is savvy. They've got very good data. They know how much is produced, how much is projected to be produced, how much the country needs. For instance, a few years ago, I knew that Tanzania would produce 6 million tons of maize, their local consumption 4.5 to 5 million tons of maize, and therefore what was allowed to go out of the country is only 1.5, about 1 to 1.5 million metric tons. That's how serious Tanzania is. And that's why when we look at it, then you say Kenya, we have some ground to cover to make ourselves food secure. But something else that you must also think about, this thing that we call urbanization. There is Kenya, there is a lot of urbanization. The bigger percentage of our people are getting urbanized. When you get urbanized, move from rural to urban areas, you don't engage in food production, but your demand for food is more. You know the reason why we say, for instance, if your population increases from 20 million to 40 million, it does not mean that you will double the food production. No. Your food production will be exponential, because when you move from rural to urban area, your diet changes. You consume more animal products. It takes 8 times more water to produce animal products as compared to plant-based products. You woke up in the morning today, you probably took a sausage, some eggs, but the rural folk probably took porridge and sweet potatoes, all plant-based products. So you have already consumed 8 times more. You put 8 times more pressure to the production resources as compared to the rural folk. It will come to your lunch. You'll probably take chicken and something and maybe meat. Again, animal-based products. Come to your dinner the same. The rural folk might take beans and ugali for lunch, exerting less pressure on production resources of our food. So the more you urbanize, the more animal-based food you take, and the more pressure you put on the on production of our food. And that is why we say, the more you urbanize, the more you need to produce, and it's not a linear correlation, it's exponential. I hope that is understood.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, that is very tricky, and that's where most people don't get it. That we are becoming more urbanized. We are not only moving away from the production, but we are also exerting more pressure, because now we are eating more animal products as compared to plant-based products, and exerting more pressure.
8 more times.
8 more times.
When it comes to the production of it.
8 more times water to produce 1 kilo of meat as compared to 1 kilo of grains, maybe maize or beans. That's how bad it is.
Okay, that's new information to me, and I'm sure it's also new information to a lot of people. Well, still on that, malnutrition, unfortunately, still remains a huge challenge in some parts of this country. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we still have malnutrition as a problem, in some parts of the country. Probably, yes, the buck stops with the government, but also we need to stop this mentality of serikali saidia all the times, right? So what should be done in order to empower the communities to be able to improve their own food security as a community without looking at, the government needs to do that, it needs to do this or that? How responsible should we be just as a community in order for us to ensure our own food security?
Vivian, a very good question. There is what we call hidden hunger in this country and in many parts of the world, in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Mm-hmm. Hidden hunger means you could have food, you eat, you fill your tummy, but it is not nutritious food.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of hidden hunger in this country.
Yeah.
The food we take is not nutritious. That's why research must be undertaken to ensure that when you give, for instance, maize, it is maize that contains just more than starch, that contains something else, that you can be able, even for the rural poor people, when they take that food, it's food that is good for them. That is the reason why, for instance, Cereal Growers Association, CGA, we have embarked on a project to promote what we call high iron beans. High iron beans, these are beans which are very high on zinc and iron, meaning that beans is not a very expensive food. Even anybody can be able to access beans. So anybody accessing these beans can be able to have nutritious food and plenty of it, as it were, so that when we define food security, we are talking about nutrition, which we talked about.
Yeah.
So this food has to be nutritious. It has got to be affordable. It's also affordable. It has got to be available anytime it's required. And it has to have a component of stability, that it's consistently there. Not there this season and next season is not there. So we are investing a lot in coming up with nutritious foods. Number 2, post-harvest handling and management. The moment some foods are infested, then they lose their nutritive value. Let me give you an example. Sometimes you can go to some areas of this country which are the bread basket, but you can still find stunted children. Why? This is because of aflatoxin. Aflatoxin, either in maize or in groundnuts, will make the children get stunted without you knowing that this is the cause of aflatoxin. So unless we have very good, meticulous handling processes, post-handling processes of our grains and pulses, we can still have nutritional issues through poor post-harvest handling. And that's why every time when you talk about aflatoxin and measures to control aflatoxin, it is a whole value chain from planting to harvesting to processing to the table. And therefore, it is not left on one partner. It has got to be a whole value chain. All the partners have got to be brought on board. Those that do the planting, those that do the harvesting, the transportation. Somebody can do a very good job at planting, at harvesting, but the person that's doing the transportation does a poor job, and therefore aflatoxin sets in. Or the person doing processing, aflatoxin sets in. So we must have it as an education that transcends throughout the whole value chain, that people get to understand that at the end of the day, we need safe food, and that's where now food safety comes.
Yeah.
So there is a very thin line between food security and food safety.
Yeah.
Food safety simply means taking food that is contaminated, that will bring you foodborne diseases. You can have a lot of food, but it's contaminated food. At the end of the day, it's poison you are taking and not food. Because our narrative and our slogan is, your food is your medicine. Chakula chako ni dawa yako. Lakini ikiwa chakula chako kina sumu, sasa chakula kinageuka kinakuwa ni sumu.
Yeah.
So if your food is supposed to be your medicine, but your food is contaminated, so that food now turns out to be your poison. So it is also a shame that in most parts of this country, you see nutritional deficiencies and you see stunting because of poor post-harvest handling and also because of taking food that's not very nutritious under what we call hidden hunger.
All right. And maybe, I don't know, but I don't know if you've answered my question on communities and what responsibility they have upon themselves to just ensure that they are also just food secure upon themselves as, you know, in the smallest of groups.
This is what we have done, for instance. Let me give you a very good example of what Cereal Growers Association, where I work, what we have done. We have a very good model that we call the Farmers Service Center. You go to a rural area, you pick the lead farmers, and you capacity build them, you train them, so that they can be the agents of change of the rest of the community. You give them enough education, you train them on how to acquire quality inputs, on how to use the inputs, on how to aggregate when it comes to harvesting, on how to do value addition, and on how to build economic resilience among themselves. So once we have built enough of this, then they can cascade the same to the rest of the farmers. That's how you enable community at community level. So the Farmers Service Center model, which is a model by the Cereal Growers Association, is a model that enables and capacity builds and builds resilience with the rural farmers, so that even in the absence of what we call the normal extension service from the government, they still have their own extension service that they can be able to rely on, and they can be able now to tap from one another. And we are also putting these farmers into groups so they can get to learn from one another. And at the end of the day, even if it means give them loans and insuring them, they are insurable because they're in groups, and they're loanable because they're in groups. And at the end of the day, this information remains with the community.
Okay. And as we come to an end of this conversation, maybe we can finish off with, when we're talking about food safety, maybe are there measures, good measures put in place in to track and even recall unsafe food products? From where you sit? Are there good measures for that as we wind up?
I know there is a bill. I have sat through that bill. Personally, there is a bill that is being enacted on food safety. And one of the issues that we look at on food safety is traceability. It's going to be a key issue that the food you're consuming, can you trace it from where it was produced? So traceability is extremely important. Going forward, the food you consume is going to be traced from where it was produced. Number two, we are also looking at issues of food safety keenly because it impacts economically. For instance, if you took your maize from Kenya and you want to export it and get to the border, it has got aflatoxin, it comes back, you lose that market. And once you lose the market, then the radar is on you. You might not be able to export again. So that is a loss. We are looking at it because of there is a thin line between the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister of Health. We need to bring these two ministries together so that we can see on how to work together to trace and to see how food safety is impacting on our health sector. So all these are things that we are putting together and trying to look at how do we really ensure that food safety is guaranteed. The food that you're eating, the food that you're taking on the table. Sometimes I see you air some skuma wiki produced in very unfamiliar circumstances. That's the traceability we are talking about. How to use agrochemicals responsibly, which ones are supposed to be used, which ones are supposed to be pulled off the market. All those issues now fall under food safety.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation and just shedding light on this very, very important discussion, because our food security is just as important. It is a matter of national, okay, I've lost my words. Yeah, of national importance. So thank you so much. That was Mr. Julius Nyabicha, and he is a food safety and food security expert. And he's just gotten to tell us more about food security so that we get to understand what we need to do as a country in order for us to get to the status where we are food secure. Remember, the president will be giving his State of the Nation or the State of the Nation address. This will be his second one, and that will be taking place in the Parliament buildings at around 2:30 p.m. So you better keep it right here, KBC Channel 1, as we will be keeping you up to tabs with that. My name is Vivian Dago, and this is where we get to end Good Morning Kenya for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Goodbye.
Let's assume you're wearing a smartwatch. How does it actually measure your heart rate? There are two different methods: optical pulse measurement with light and a heart rate sensor that records electrical activity. More on that now.
When it comes to accurate heart rate monitoring, we always recommend the classic chest straps. It's an electrophysiological recording. They essentially detect the